Okay, we're going to begin the meeting then. Just if members remember to switch off your phones and put them in airplane mode and put them on silent. And if members can also declare interest as appropriate throughout the meeting. We're going to receive 2 oral briefings today. The first one is an overview of Environment, Marine and Fisheries Group, and the second is an overview of the Food and Farming Group. We'll also consider 2 policy proposals for subordinate legislation and 2 written briefings on an EQIA for online as primary communication with farmers and the outcome to a consultation on the implementation of an EU regulation on invasive alien species. Okay, agenda item 1, apologies. We've received apologies from Sydney Anderson, Edwin Poots, William Irwin and Keith Archibald. Any other apologies? Okay. Item 2 then just is our chairperson's business. Just to let the committee know that myself and the deputy chair met with the RDC, Rural Development Council, on Monday. And whilst other committee members were invited to come along, it was just ourselves who were there. There is a paper in the pack on page 6, just that refers to, I suppose, what the RDC really, their priorities and what they want us to keep an eye on. If you want any other information on that, obviously you can speak to myself or the clerk. Just during the Permanent Secretary's briefing to the committee on the 2nd of June, he discussed the programme for government, and I think it might be worthwhile if we ask the department for the process and timescale for the programme for government, what outcomes DARA will be responsible for, and when we might see a draft of the department's action plans associated with PFG. Our members agreed that we should ask the Minister for that?
Agreed.
Okay. Item 3 then are the draft minutes of the meeting held on the 9th of June. And those are on page 9 of your packs. Are members content with the draft minutes?
Agreed.
Okay. The minutes will be published online, and there are no matters arising out of those minutes. Okay. Item 5 then is our oral briefing from DARA Environment, Marine and Fisheries Group overview. First briefing is an overview of the Environment, Marine and Fisheries Group. There's a clerk's memo on page 17 of your pack. The list of environmental responsibilities on this group is on page 29, and DARA's organisational chart and summary review considered at the meeting on the 2nd of June is on page 41 and 42.
If they're speaking, just one needs to for this. Yeah.
Okay, can I welcome David Small, Deputy Secretary, and his team, Chris Mills, John Spears, Helen Anderson and Dave Foster.
Can I make an apology, Chair? John Mills hasn't actually arrived yet, so I'm joined by Dave Foster.
Okay,
Yeah.
no problem.
Thanks. Thank you.
And we're asking where possible the presentations can be kept to 10 minutes to allow time for a question and answers.
Yeah, appreciate that. Okay, happy if I start? Look, thank you, Chair, and I'll make a few introductory comments. So, first of all, thank you for the opportunity to brief the committee today on the work of the Department's Environment, Marine and Fisheries Group. I'm joined by a number of colleagues just to ensure that we can cover as many issues as possible. I plan to give a brief overview of our responsibilities and how we contribute to the work of the Department, and it should take no more than 10 minutes. My group, the Environment, Marine Fisheries Group, is one of 4 main organisational groups within the Department. The group has just over 700 staff, including administrative, scientific and industrial grades across a number of sites. Our resourcing budgets have been reduced in recent years, and alongside that, the number of posts we have within the group has reduced. and we expect additional budget pressures in the years ahead, which will make things challenging for us. We have a very wide range of responsibilities, which include both policy and delivery functions. These cover issues such as waste, water quality, biodiversity, climate change, air pollution, fisheries and marine. The group also includes the Northern Ireland Environment Agency with a regulatory role, again in areas such as waste, pollution and agricultural cross-compliance. So, for example, the committee may have heard within the last week about an oil spill at Larne and a number of pollution incidents recently resulting in fish kills, and the agency has been involved in investigating those incidents. The group's work contributes mainly to DAERA's second outcome, which is a clean, healthy environment benefiting people, nature and the economy. But we also contribute to other departmental goals, including, for example, going for growth and the work that the fishing industry does in its contribution to the Northern Ireland economy. The context for much of what we do within the group originates in various EU directives. Key directives include the Water Framework Directive, the Nitrates Directive, Waste Framework Directive, Landfill Directive, Air Quality Directive, Habitats Directive, Birds Directive, and a long list of other directives which set down a number of very challenging obligations for us that we must meet. For some of the directives, the Department and my group can deliver many of the necessary measures and interventions. For example, on the Habitats Directive, the work that we lead through interventions like agri-environment schemes will help deliver against those obligations. For some other directives, commitment and interventions are required from other departments. For example, on the Air Quality Directive, traffic emissions will be a major issue and traffic management solutions, and interventions will be required, for example, from the Department for Infrastructure. The committee may be aware of an EU pilot case in relation to water charging under the Water Framework Directive, and again on that one we need to work in partnership with other departments and organisations like NI Water. In summary, our key challenges will be around water quality, with a target of achieving 70% of good status in our rivers and lakes by 2021, coming from a current good status level of 36%. Challenge around reducing volumes of waste which go to landfill, including increasing the amount of waste that goes to recycling, and that will be a PFG indicator for the group. We have targets of achieving a compliant waste sector with effective waste licensing to manage where waste goes and actually track waste within the system, including a robust response to waste crime. And the committee will be aware of the issue around the Maboy site, for example, which is an example of an illegal waste site. We also want to promote the circular economy concept, which is about using waste as a resource, with a focus on reuse and recycling rather than simply disposal. We have challenges around achieving good habitat and landscape quality, halting biodiversity loss, and we'll do that through interventions like the Environmental Farming Scheme, Interreg 5A, and the designation of high-value sites such as ASSIs. We have challenges around improving air quality and hope this year to produce the first Northern Ireland air quality strategy, and again that will be a programme for government indicator for the department and for my group. We also have challenges around promoting sustainability, and that is a responsibility transferred under the reorganisation of departments from OFM DFM. We want to promote the awareness and appreciation of the environment, and we do that through our facilities, including country parks and, for example, the coastal zone facility on the north coast. We will protect marine areas through the designation of marine conservation zones and marine licensing, and we will support sustainable fishing through Common Fisheries Policy and the European Maritime Fisheries Fund. And of course we have a regulatory role in cases of pollution and breaches of environmental regulations. We have a number of interventions which help us deliver our obligations, and those include the development of strategies, for example the air quality strategy, the Environment Fund, through which we will fund 2.6 million to support projects which help us to deliver our environmental obligations. The Environmental Farming Scheme, which I've already mentioned, which will be delivering significant funding out to the agricultural industry to deliver water quality, biodiversity obligations. Interreg 5A, which I've also mentioned, which again will put significant funding towards projects to deliver our environmental targets. I've already spoken about designation of marine conservation zones, the administration of a carrier bag levy, which will discourage the use of plastic bags in the environment. The Rethink Waste Scheme, which puts funding to councils to support reuse and recycling of waste. Designation of special areas of conservation like ASSIs, and, as I say, support to the fishing industry, for example, through the European Maritime Fisheries Fund. So we have a range of interventions which help us deliver against our environmental obligations. I think that's probably all I wanted to say for now, Chair, in terms of just describing the broad responsibilities of the group and the challenges we have and the kind of interventions we have available in terms of how we address those challenges. And we're happy to deal with any questions the committee may have.
Thank you. You mentioned the pilot case from the EU. Is this the only pilot case against the group?
It's not the only infraction.
We have a number of
yeah.
infraction cases across a range of the environmental responsibilities. So there's a water framework directive and the pilot case that David mentioned. There are pilot cases in relation to the Habitats and Birds Directive. There's potentially one in relation to air quality, and maybe one or two as well in relation to transposition of some of the directives, the Water Framework Directive, and there may be some on the waste side, John may be aware of.
Yeah, so that we have a range of potential infraction cases, and I suppose we always operate with the risk of infraction from the Commission.
Do you have an idea of how much it cost in the last financial year for infraction cases? If you don't have that information today, yeah, I'm happy to accept it in writing.
I think we have faced any.
No, there haven't actually been any infraction fines.
Okay,
no cases yet got to that stage in Northern Ireland or indeed the wider UK. So the aim is to try and deal with them in a way that means that they don't get to that stage. There is one actually that is at the European Court of Justice stage in relation to the Urban Wastewater Treatment Directive around the provision of the right level of treatment at Ballycastle. The works are now in action to deliver that via Northern Ireland Water, but that has got as far as the court, but that's yet to be heard.
Okay. David?
Thank you. Well, if I could just follow up the infraction cases issue. I'm sufficiently long in the memory I can remember in the first Assembly mandate when the committee was not given details on the number of infraction cases that were floating around at the time, with specific reference to how many cases against the UK applied either solely or principally to Northern Ireland. I know we live in a much more open and transparent world these days than we did 15 or 16 years ago, but it would be useful to see just how we compare with other regions.
Yep.
If you could give us a summary of those, I don't expect them today, but
yep,
it would be useful just to see.
Happy to provide a summary of the various infraction risks that we see and any ongoing infraction cases.
If I could go on, I have a number of questions. I'll try not to monopolise things too much, but you've mentioned very briefly, David, the issue of budget reduction. Given the way that responsibilities have changed between different departments, it's not easy for some of us to see exactly how the budgets have changed across different areas of responsibility. Can you give us an easy summary of those areas which fall to your responsibility, which weren't just within the old DOE, but as you've said, included as far as OFM, DFM, and presumably decal for the fisheries bit?
Yeah.
Could you tell us what the budget was last financial year for those in aggregate, and what it is, for your responsibilities this year, please?
Yeah, well, I can't give you those figures today, but I can provide those in writing. I mean, what I can say is that my group now includes responsibilities that would have formerly been with the old DOE, with decal, and with OFM, DFM. In overall terms, our budget is under pressure, with further anticipated resourcing pressures in the years ahead. So at the moment, I think, like other departments, we are operating on anticipated budget reductions in the years ahead of perhaps 5% a year, and that's kind of our planning assumption, and we're working on how we would deliver our responsibilities within 3 years' time, following potentially 3 years of 5% year-on-year reductions in budget. And that means looking at our priorities. It means looking at how we deliver business, how efficiently we deliver business, the kind of delivery models we're operating under, the potential to operate with partners. But in terms of the budget that I'm responsible for, that potential 5% reduction year-on-year will be a significant reduction over that 3-year period, and will create real challenges for us,
And
like other parts of the department.
have you had specific problems following on from the voluntary exit scheme in terms of losing specialists, basically generalists?
Yep, we have. We've lost a range of staff under the voluntary exit scheme, including specialist staff. So we have lost some quite senior staff within my group, formerly sitting within DOE. We have lost some scientific specialist staff. We have done a bit of work to try and identify where we believe our key challenges now rest, and identified a number of what we would regard as high priority critical posts, and we now have a process in place to fill some of those posts. But we lost over 100 staff under voluntary exit scheme. We've identified up to about 25 posts that I believe are critical. Some of those posts we will fill, but we may not be able to backfill. So if someone's successful from somewhere else within the group, we may have to run other posts vacant as a consequence. And that's not unique to my group. It's how the whole of the department is having to manage headcount and budget. So yes, we have lost some specialist skills. We've identified areas where we feel we need to replace those skills, and we're doing something about that. But we will nevertheless be running with reduced headcount and reduced budget, and that will be very challenging. And we will have to manage our way through this year and the years ahead very, very carefully.
Thank you. Oliver?
Yes, and thank you for your presentation. When you talked about the MCZs that's been introduced in the Marine, how will they be monitored? How will they be enforced? And what kind of cost will be attached to that? Or will that be something to do with local authorities? It's not quite clear.
So these are marine conservation zones, is that you're referring to? John, can you?
Yeah. Earlier this year, there was consultation on 4 prospective MCZs.
Yep.
That consultation ended on the 11th of March. And since then, there's been an analysis of those consultation responses. That then will go forward as a proposition for approval through the Minister. And it is envisaged that they will be designated by the end of the year. Following that, there's a 2-year period to develop the management plans associated with those MCZs. And there are applications to Interreg to secure the funding to develop those management plans. Because the characteristics being protected in each of the 4 designated or proposed designated sites are different, those management plans will vary. And until we have developed those management plans, we don't have the detail of what actually will be involved in terms of the enforcement regime. In previous experience, the management plans, depending upon the nature of the feature being protected, can be quite light. It doesn't have to prohibit, for example, all fishing. So it can be quite light in terms of, but it will be dependent upon what the features being protected are.
And local authorities would have to change their bylaws or introduce new bylaws.
Possibly, but again, until the management plans are developed and are in place, that detail isn't known.
And the one in Red Bay, do you see any danger from the salmon farm?
No.
There was no mention of that there at all in your report when you were dealing with it. There is quite a bit of, there would be an environmental impact there, surely, from the salmon farm onto that.
Well, there's been various surveillance and analysis of the licence conditions for the salmon farm, and to the best of my knowledge, there is no issue identified with the operation of that salmon farm in Red Bay.
I'll come back to that at some other time. When you talk about the ASSIs, thank you for that, Joe. How do you establish an ASSI, and you know, what's your ground rules for it?
Ellen, do you want to pick that up?
Yep, certainly. In terms of the area of special scientific, in terms of areas of special scientific interest, there are set down criteria that have been established by eminent scientists around the relevant features, and that can either be habitats, or it can be species, or it can be geological aspects. And staff would go out and they would do surveillance on the site, with having discussed with the farmer. Obviously, they don't just walk on. So there would be discussion with the farmer. They would go on. They would look at the sites. They would produce reports. Those are then considered internally, both by the department and also by the Council for Nature Conservation. So that's a statutory advisory body who previously advised the Department of the Environment, now advises DERA in terms of nature conservation and other related issues. So there would be discussion with them around that to see if the scientists who are on it, they're independent, to see if they also, if they have any comments in terms of the intention to declare an area of special scientific interest, and then there would be a designation, and there would then be a full consultation, a public consultation exercise conducted.
And there'd be stringent controls on that ground then, wouldn't there?
In terms of, so you would designate the area of special scientific interest, you would do all the consultation, and then if it was determined that it was still appropriate, that would be declared, and that would be the finalisation of it as a designated site. Just as with the marine conservation zones, the degree of management requirement depends very much on what the feature is on the site. And certainly, I know that there have been a lot of concerns with farmers, and particularly in certain areas, around the designation of sites in the past. But fundamentally, most of these sites are on farmland. Some of them would be in quarries, but the vast majority of them would be on farmland. Some council-owned property as well, but certainly the vast majority would be private farmland. And the reason that those sites are still there is because farmers have been very good stewards of the landscape, and have, through the farming practices that they chose to take on board, safeguarded those. So very often the requirements that the department's putting on through the management agreement don't prohibit excessively what farmers would want to do. There is a system that once you're in a designated site, if you want to conduct certain activities, that you have to seek consent from the department. But we seek in the main to turn that around very quickly. There's a statutory obligation to turn that around in, I think it's 20 days, and certainly for the vast majority of them we would turn them around in that time period, and on about at least 70% of those we would have no difficulty with what farmers are proposing to do.
On the ASSIs round Woodburn Reservoir, where the drilling's taking place, what sort of consultation was done there?
Now,
There's ASSIs there.
well, the consultation process would have followed that normal pattern. So where ASSIs are already established, that would be the case. But the actual drilling work at Woodburn isn't on an ASSI, so that hasn't come in through the ASSI aspect. It would be one of my colleagues that would be involved in the detail around the drilling work at Woodburn, if that's...
Aye. Is he?
Yeah, I mean, on Woodburn, Oliver, we have responsibilities in terms of monitoring the activity at the site. So we are monitoring.
Should I say a few words?
Yeah, we're monitoring in terms of water impact on water quality, drinking water quality. We're monitoring surface water quality, impact on groundwater. We're managing any waste that may be removed from the site. So we have a clear role in terms of monitoring the impact of what's happening there. And I think, you know, we're fulfilling those obligations, and we obviously need to do that. Anything you want to add, Chris?
Only that that monitoring at the moment has shown no impact in terms of the surface water, the groundwater, and indeed we're working with NI Water to make sure that the water treatment works there is fully protected as well. So it's really about monitoring the water environment.
Did you carry out any assessment beforehand, any environmental assessment beforehand?
I think the issue around environmental assessment beforehand would be a matter for the local authority and the planning process, and I don't think that they deemed that it was necessary to do so.
I'm talking about the environmental department. Did
No.
you carry out any assessment prior to the drill?
No, but we wouldn't be required to.
No, you wouldn't. Right, okay.
No.
So you take the word of the council and the drilling company?
No, it's a matter of what our role is, and our role is to monitor any impact, a possible impact, once the deemed consent in this case has been issued by the local authority. So our role is to monitor whether there's any impact.
How close to the ASSI is the drill site?
I don't know the answer to that. I'd have to come back.
Oliver,
Would have to come back.
we could clarify that for you.
Would you?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you do that for me?
But I can assure you, we are fulfilling our obligations in terms of monitoring the impact of the activity currently at the site.
I think there's a gap there, you know, to say you don't have to do an environmental impact assessment. It's down to the council and the drill company. I think that's wrong.
Yeah, I think that
I think you should be in there yourselves to do that assessment prior to anything starting.
I think it may be down to the elements of the planning process that resulted in the activity taking place. So it was done under what are called permitted development sites. I think had this gone through a full planning application process, we would have been consulted as a statutory consultee, and we would then have had a more direct input.
The dangerous building, sorry. Go on. The dangerous buildings one, is that power coming away from local authorities now? You know, dangerous buildings authorities could put an order on it. Do you envisage taking that power away from the local authorities now?
Do you want to pick that up, Glenn?
There's a consultation at the moment on, which runs to the end of June, on the current legislation around dilapidation, derelict buildings and dangerous buildings. It's fair to say that the impacts on that can be around amenity or regeneration, local environmental quality, and subject to the views of the consultation, the proposal would be that a need for updating of the legislation to ensure that local authorities have got the right level of powers to deal with buildings like that. So various pieces of legislation, some of them dating back to the 1800s, some of them back to the 1950s and 60s. So the previous DOE, the Minister consulted on potential for an update to that, to allow local authorities where there is derelict site, dangerous buildings that aren't being dealt with by the owners, to give local authorities the powers to step in and to make good.
And that consultation is still running. That runs until the end of this
June.
month, until the end of June.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Oliver.
Thank you.
Okay.
Robin?
Thank you very much, Chair. Morning, folks. EU infractions, Strangford Law, where's that at the moment?
John, do you have details on that? I mean, yeah.
So, Strangford Lock was a pilot case a couple of years ago. There was work done to develop a restoration plan, and that was prepared in conjunction with Ulster Wildlife, who at that time were the complainant to the Commission. That went forward to the Commission 2 years ago now, and that restoration plan was agreed. And last year, that pilot infraction was lifted, so there is no longer a pilot case on the books with regard to Strangford Lock. The restoration plan comprised a number of elements. There was a protection element, and at that time there was regulations put in place to prohibit pot fishing in an area across the centre of Strangford Lock, and that was important in terms of securing the Commission's agreement to lift the pilot infraction case. There was also a requirement to monitor the Modiolus, and that continues. We continue to monitor the growth and development of Modiolus. Unfortunately, the signals are that they continue to suffer in terms of the re-establishment of the Modiolus reefs. And the science is still not clear as to whether there are other environmental factors that are coming to bear in terms of the re-establishment of these reefs. But it's clear that since pot fishing has been prohibited in this area for the last 2 years, it's not as a consequence of any fishing activity.
In regards to the plans and the deliveries itself, if the reefs are being re-established, is there a chance of the EU coming back in again? Because obviously, as you're indicating, John, there's other causes, for want of a better word,
Well,
that haven't identified.
I think we have demonstrated that every best effort has been made in terms of protecting the reefs that had been previously identified. The science is still out in terms of the environment within which these reefs are trying to re-establish, and whether there are other factors to be brought to bear. We need to have the scientific evidence to present to the Commission, but the Commission at this point in time are satisfied that every effort is being made and that we keep in regular contact with the environmental NGOs that have an interest in Strangford Lough to keep them up to date.
Okay, thanks. Fisheries Bill was introduced last kicks of the last mandate. Complex, wide-reaching, controversial bill, for want of a better word. Have you any intention of bringing it forward in this mandate, and will it be in the same format?
Well,
You want me to
I'll let
pick
you
that
pick
up?
that up, John. I mean, we were able to bring forward aspects of the fisheries bill in the last mandate.
Yeah.
There were some aspects that weren't included, and I think we'll need to look
The
again.
aspects we brought forward were those were needed to stop EU
that
infraction
are absolutely
fines.
essential,
Was actually the only reason the committee allowed it to go forward, David.
Yeah.
So was the other parts of that bill?
Okay. There is a proposal to bring forward, because an element of the former fisheries bill was to bring in varies for the Lochs Agency. There is a proposal to bring forward a Foil Fisheries Amendment Act, which would take those measures that were previously in the fisheries bill and amend them in the 52 Foil Fisheries Act. So that would regularise the position with regard to varies for the Lochs Agency. The other, there are a number of other aspects, as you're aware. One of them was around fixed penalty notices. We would be keen to bring that forward as a Fisheries Amendment Act in due course. It's unlikely to be brought forward in parallel to the foil fisheries, so it's going to come first, and then we'll look and see whether in the second part of the mandate it's feasible and practical to bring forward the other measures that we would like to bring forward.
Sorry, you're bringing forward then, so if I can get this, you're going to bring parts of the
Yes.
fisheries bill forward
Yeah.
then?
Yeah, the
Like
priority
an
being-
overarching, maybe?
Yeah, the priority being the foil fisheries amendment.
Yeah. Sorry, Chair, just to wind in this. In regards to fisheries, now that we are coming in under one department, for want of a better word, would it not be better just start a written branch review of the 66 Fisheries Act and start from scratch rather than messing about, or the tinkering about, sorry, I don't mean messing about, sorry, well, I do, sorry, the messing about with different bits of legislation here and there? Would it not be better just starting a clean bill?
We can certainly look at that. There was quite a lot of work, as you know, done in the preparation for the previous fisheries bill, and you've indicated the reasons why it was foreshortened. We're still keen that elements of that are brought forward, and it's doing that in the most pragmatic way, I guess. As I indicated previously, we're keen to get the amendments to the Foil Fisheries Act to ensure that the Lochs Agency have the varies to do their work, and we'll certainly look the most appropriate way to bring forward the other measures.
I think it's a valid point, Robin. I mean, we will look again at what's necessary, what we feel is needed, and that will involve further consideration and discussion with the Minister.
And I think that was the problem with the fisheries bill at the end of the last mandate, because it was between DARD and DCAL.
Yeah.
And there wasn't time for both committees to give it the proper scrutiny it deserved, was why it wasn't taken forward rather than.
Yeah. So I think we need to look at it and find again. But we,
Don't leave it to the last 6 months.
No,
It'll be
I know.
finished in
We'll give it
20.
further consideration. We'll need to discuss the approach and what's needed with the Minister and then bring proposals back.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Harold?
Thanks, Madam Chair. Just touching on a few of the issues that was mentioned there previously, Marine Conservation Zone, Carlingford Lough being one of those. Will it be there will be an effect on the detrimental effect in mussel dredging?
There is a proposal for Carlingford Lough, yes, and as I indicated, it will depend upon the feature being protected. We still haven't firmed up the final proposals because the consultation ended in March. As indicated, we've been reviewing the response to the consultation, and then there'll be potentially slightly amended proposals coming forward for approval. So it's premature at this point in time to confirm exactly what the implications will be for commercial activities in the loch.
Is that a possibility that it could be affected?
Well, you know, we've been looking. The other potential designated area is Rathlin, and we've been working very closely with fishing interests in Rathlin to look at how to allow that activity, that economic activity, to continue, but at the same time, to what extent is their fishing methods potentially damaging the feature that we wish to protect? And we've had very good engagement with Rathlin fishers, and I think we can come forward with proposals that meet both objectives, both the environmental objectives and the economic objectives of fishing.
In relation to ASSIs, I think Helen will have met me before,
Yes.
and a number of angry farmers.
Yes, indeed. Yes, on a couple of occasions.
Yes, and how the farmers felt this was enforced upon them.
Yes.
They very much objected in the Annalong area and the Mourne Mountains West area.
Yes.
Not too sure how the consultation, they weren't happy with the consultation. Not all farmers had been met, particularly in the Mourne Mountains West area. I think there was anything up to maybe 30, 40, 50 farmers there, about 15 or 20 perhaps were met. Very rough terrain. It'd be very difficult for anyone to walk on those lands, and I think it was stated that yes, you didn't cover some of those areas. So how do you intend to do things better?
Yeah, well, certainly I would concede that the Mournes designations, the ASSI designations last year, were challenging for both for farmers and for officials. Certainly the Mournes was one of the largest. Very often ASSIs are very small, and it's only 2 or 3 or maybe 10 farmers that are involved with the Mournes, as you indicate quite rightly. There were about 40 farmers involved. A lot of the science on the Mournes had been done a number of years previous. There had been some updates, but not total updates. And what happened during the consultation, and I do appreciate that farmers had concerns both about the fact that an ASSI was being looked at in the area, and then separately in terms of the process that was gone through. And certainly that was why we had those couple of evening meetings with the farmers, and DARD, as we were at that time, DOE. DARD officials actually came down along with us, because there were also concerns about the fact that DOE officials might be making certain recommendations or requiring certain things, and that might conflict with something that a DARD official had advised or indicated needed to be done for agri-environment payments or whatever. And at that time, both DOE and DARD officials came down together to indicate that we would be working much more closely together, and certainly have been in terms of shaping the agri-environment schemes going forward, and in particular the environmental farming scheme. And as David has indicated, the environmental farming scheme is much more strongly predicated this time around to deliver against both biodiversity and water quality needs. And the intention there is to provide incentives for farmers to do the right things in terms of improving environmental quality. But while they're still conducting agricultural practices that satisfy their own needs.
So I think, Mr. McKee, we are trying to recognise that ASSI designation of special sites does have some impact on farmers and landowners, and within the environmental farming scheme, we will be targeting some of the support specifically towards those areas of high value that are being designated, and I think that is in recognition of the fact that the designations do have an impact.
Another issue which concerned me greatly in relation to the 5p plastic bag. I just realised that not only has plastic bags been charged at 5p, but also paper bags. And I felt as though, what's the incentive to get away from plastic bags by charging for paper bags? Plastic bags takes maybe 20 years to disintegrate.
Mm-hmm.
Paper bag may disintegrate within 1 year. And the other thing that raised a major concern with me, and we have difficulties trying to keep our small businesses going in our local towns, and we have the large shops out of town, where a lot of these large multinational, without naming them, it appears to be they don't have to charge because they call it a bag for life. They don't have a charge. Could you explain the reason why?
Can you go into that detail, David?
Yeah, certainly. When the carry bag levy was being introduced, the aim was to address the overall impact of carrier bags, whatever their source and type, and the evidence showed that although there's a lot known about plastic bags, that there was also an environmental impact from paper bags as well. They're not without environmental impact, so that was the reasoning for including them within the scheme. There are some exemptions from the charge in relation to certain things like in pharmacies, patient confidentiality, food hygiene and safety. So there are some exemptions from the levy, but at the time it was decided that looking at the overall impact, the paper bags were not without environmental impact. So that's why they were included. There is a requirement under the legislation to introduce a levy for a review of the carrier bag levy, and that's being commenced at the moment, and that review has to be brought before the Assembly and the Committee. So as we go through that process, there'll be an opportunity for members to comment on that, certainly. In relation to the larger retailers and the bag for life you mentioned, the levy now applies to any bag that's charged 19p or less. So some retailers have taken the decision to charge 20p for their bags for life, and that takes them out of the scope of the scheme. So that's where the cut-off is at the moment. And again, that could be something that is considered as part of the review as to what bags are brought within it.
But by and large, the levy is applied equally to the big retailers. So any bags below the 19p
Yes.
exemption level, are also caught by the levy and the levy arrangements. And we have developed very strong relationships with the retailers, including the big retailers, to make sure that they are fulfilling their obligations.
And we have our operational team that implements the levy would carry out a number of audits to ensure that what the retailers are telling us in reality is matched. And obviously, given the volumes, we've been targeting the larger retailers, so we do keep an eye on them. We have a specific member of staff who's act as the client manager of them to make sure that we understand what they're doing and the rationale behind it.
But sorry, Mr. As Dave has indicated, that there is a review planned, and that will take place later this year. I think by and large, the purpose of the levy arrangement was to reduce the number of plastic bags circulating in the environment, and that has been very successful. We've seen a very, very, very significant reduction in plastic bags circulating in the environment. So the policy objective is being achieved. We have noticed recently, probably, that the income we secure from the levy is increasing slightly, which suggests more people are now prepared to pay the 5 pence. Mm-hmm. So the review is coming at a good time, and I think we will review again the effectiveness of the levy arrangement, its success in terms of delivering against the environmental objective, and issues that Dave has talked about in terms of exemptions that apply.
In its first year, there was a reduction of 72% in the uses of reusable carry bags, which is around 116 million less than baseline year. As David has said, that's started to creep up a bit and you can see that as you go into the shops yourselves. You know, you're perhaps more prepared to pay for a bag than you would have been in the first year, and so we'll look at that as part of the review.
Could I ask another question? In relation to an environmental policy here, how much of the aggregate levy credit scheme went into benefiting communities? The aggregate levy scheme was obviously something that we're looking at, and particularly to quarries and extraction of sand and gravel and whatever. That was in relation to greening. I know in England, Scotland and Wales it has been used in such a way that the benefits that went into the communities. From what I gather, our communities in Northern Ireland have not benefited from any monies coming. Where did the money go to?
I'm looking to my colleagues. Colleague who can help with that? No.
Certainly, we need to double check and come back to you on the detail on that. But the aggregates levy credit scheme that was introduced in Northern Ireland, that was put in place and the credits, the money went back into the industry to help them to put in place better environmental controls and regimes. Some of them chose to do that in terms of working to some extent with communities in their area, and certainly a number of the quarries now have engaged much more fulsomely with those who live in their hinterland areas, and would invite them in regularly and have created like biodiversity rich areas. So we'll certainly come back on the detail of it, but the aggregates levy credit scheme in the Northern Ireland context was about working with the industry to help them improve their environmental performance, and a certain aspect of that involved enhanced community engagement and provision that enabled community access and improved environmental awareness for the community.
But if it helps, Chair, we'll come back with a more a full answer on that in writing.
Could come in one more, sure.
Just in terms of the dangerous and dilapidated buildings consultation and the fact that there will hopefully be new legislation, can you give some idea of how, so I suppose, timescale? Because I know that there are a number of areas across Mid-Ulster where there would be major concern, particularly in villages where they're trying to regenerate, where people have bought buildings and are leaving them lying now to go to wreck and ruin, and it's unsafe as much as anything, but it's making it very difficult for villages to renew. And I'm probably thinking specifically of Balahi and South Derry, given that we have the Heaney Centre there and there's a big project to try and renew there. Have you any kind of time scale?
Well, as I say, the consultation runs, I think, until the 30th of June. So beyond the 30th of June, we'll take time to look at the consultation responses. There aren't that many responses in at this point. We expect more over the next couple of weeks. We will take some time to look at the consultations and examine what information we're getting. So that will take us into the summer recess period. It would be after recess, I suppose, before we would be in a position to bring forward and complete discussions within the department and with the Minister on a potential way forward. And at that stage, we would be ready to bring something back to the committee. So I would have thought after the recess period.
Okay, and just also, if we can just get an assurance that we will get an update, given that it was raised by a number of members here on the marine conservation zones as soon as we have any idea of what's happening there, because I think that it is of significant relevance to a number of members in the committee here. Patsy McGlone.
Okay, thanks, Chair. And just picking up on your own point there about the dilapidated and neglected buildings and the like, some of the most intractable ones have been the ones where ownership is difficult to establish. Now, that can be for two reasons. Two that I can think of anyway, where there's a difficulty over, say, a will or something like that, and it's gone the intractable nature, or because somebody's ducking and diving. Now, hearing what you're saying, Chair, and listening to that, there are in a lot of cases, and I know Balahi there, it has become a wee bit neglected of itself up through the thoroughfare, but I would reckon that in most of those buildings there is an owner, and a number of them are up for sale, the buildings. But where a council is empowered to go in and take the remedial measures. I'm just a wee bit concerned that empowering the council means offloading everything onto the ratepayers, and that somebody else walks back and then all of a sudden, maybe a year or two later, the building been not refurbished but at least tidied up, an owner appears. Just what sort of measures would be in place? One, to make sure that the person who actually owns the building or owns the property or the site is forced to pay for that remedial cost, and that it doesn't all just be dumped on the ratepayers of a district to do something which should be done in the first instance, and it shouldn't be allowed to get that level of neglect.
Okay, well, I suppose that issue and other similar issues really are the reason why the Minister felt it was important to put a consultation paper out to seek views on what kind of solutions there might be going forward. Those haven't, we obviously haven't developed an approach at this point. The consultation paper did include a number of options. I think some of those options included, a complete revamp of the current statutory base, including the roles and responsibilities of councils. There would be potential to include provisions whereby you could recover the cost, potentially from an owner of a property if the owner could be established. Anything, Dave, you want to add?
I mean, it is a complicated area, and as David has said, certainly, potentially the legislation could include an ability to recover costs, the councils to recover costs. Given the recent economic climate, a number of landowners have perhaps gone into liquidation or bankruptcy, and then there comes the issue then perhaps about putting charges on the land.
Yes.
But obviously, you have to be very careful when developing the policy because there are obviously human rights issues. I know that colleagues in the ratings area have been looking at policy proposals in the previous mandate around around the rates, and there was a consultation about that as to whether rating policy could have a role to play. So we have been talking to people in land and property services as well, recognising it is a complicated area, and we don't want to be bringing forward legislation that's going to put a burden on councils, but it needs to be something that enables the issue to be dealt with, but ensuring that the costs are not forgotten about.
Having been on a council myself and having gone through one or two of these where it was extremely difficult to establish the ownership, and I'm sure if all of a sudden it was rezoned for development purposes or something, an owner would very quickly pop up. But to get back to that, to establish a charge in that, in circumstances, say for example, where the bank had taken control of it because of, we'll take an example of a building site, you're not going to have much luck there to gain back your money if you're putting a charge on it that maybe 2 or 3 other creditors are already there before you, including the bank.
Yes, it's recognising that that's it's not a total solution. It might only be appropriate in certain circumstances.
Yes. Okay, right. Thank you. Now, Chair, with your indulgence, just a couple other issues to ask about here. One, and this pops up on some sites too, the eradication of the growth of the knotweed. Where are we going with that, or what solutions do you see to that one? It's becoming pervasive as a species, but also a lot of people are very, very concerned about it. It seems its perception as a species has just grown in people's fears too.
Yeah, no, you're right. It has become an issue of concern for a lot of landowners who find themselves with the problem. Dave, can you throw any light on the kind of issues and challenges that have come to our attention and how we deal with them?
Well, this is an area where the EU have legislated. There is an invasive alien species regulation, which has a direct effect, and we've recently consulted on the penalty regime around that within Northern Ireland, and that sets up a list of species of European Union concern. I don't think at this stage that knotweed is on that list, because I think there's a recognition that where an invasive species is so well established within a member state that actually there's little that can be done about total eradication or prevention of it arriving, which is what the European legislation is about. The options at that level at the moment are restricted, so it tends to be we have to deal with it on a case-by-case basis.
Sorry, maybe I'm displaying my own ignorance here, but how do you get rid of it? I mean, I'm not talking about the provision of it right across the whole of the north, but an individual site. What
There would be.
It's a difficult process.
It is. It's a very resistant species, so it would be utilisation of a very strong weed killer, but on a persistent yearly basis.
Yes.
And there are professional companies who specialise in knotweed treatment.
Thank you. And one final thing then, the discussion paper on the climate change bill, where is that gone, or is there anything further on that one?
Pick that one up, John.
Yeah, it's. There was a discussion paper issued, and that was the end of it as far as the process was concerned, and a matter for the new minister to decide whether she wants to take any further action on that.
There was no real support last time round at executive level for separate climate change legislation in Northern Ireland. So I suppose that would remain the position. We haven't had discussions yet with the new minister specifically on climate change or you know, the potential interventions or options available, but the position remains that the previous executive had not been in favour of a climate change bill.
Okay, right, thank you. Thanks, Chair.
We have a number of other people wanting to get back in, but if we can limit it to one question, please. I know that there were a number of issues that you wanted to raise the first time, but I think nearly everybody has raised at least 2 or 3, so I think, to be fair, we'll allow everybody to get back in if we can keep it to one question this time. David?
I will make one brief remark that there was some support of the executive for a climate change bill in the last mandate, just to be personal about it. Related to that, however, there was also a proposal from the former Environment Minister recirculated about an independent Environment Protection Agency. Can I take it that it's in a similar going nowhere position at this stage? Or perhaps Chris could give us some indication from his work in Wales as to what he might see professionally as being the benefit of it.
Yeah, there was a discussion paper which the previous minister circulated. I think the response to that, indicated some support for an independent agency. At this stage, I'm not sure we're minded to move in that direction. We do acknowledge that environmental governance is important. We will look at the current arrangements in terms of how the agency is structured, how the agency functions, how well we are delivering against our various obligations, and how it sits within the department. At this stage, I don't think there would be an intention to move towards that independent agency solution. I think we want to look at what else we can do in terms of trying to strengthen environmental governance, in terms of how the agency operates and its role within the department. We're also working with Ulster Farmers Union. We had discussions previously with the Ulster Farmers Union in terms of how we work with the industry. We're trying to start those discussions again. We've had some initial discussions with UFU, and they've been very positive. There are various other initiatives underway as a consequence of going for growth. One of the recommendations was to look at the development of a sustainable land strategy. And again, in that, there were issues around, and an expert group was established and has developed some draft thoughts on the development of a sustainable land management strategy. And within that, there are issues around the balance between advocacy and regulation. So there are a number of issues running at the moment which could have some influence in terms of how we position ourselves on environmental governance. But I think there are some things we can do in terms of how the agency operates, how we balance advocacy with our regulatory role and our role generally within the department, which we still need to do some thinking around.
Okay. Can I make a comment?
Yeah.
You've asked me for my view, and it's a personal view. I think the idea that any of the agencies are totally and truly independent is not the case, because obviously there's dependence on government funding. The advantage of the model we've got here is you're close to the policy making and you can influence the policy making, so there are advantages there. In terms of the operational side, I think it is vitally important that with operational jobs that people are allowed to get on with those jobs. You know, these are jobs that require people on a daily basis to be reacting to what's going out there in the real world. So I think it's really important that particularly the operational parts of the Northern Ireland Environment Agency are given the ability to focus on that operational role. And therefore, I think it's up to the organisation to make sure that, you know, other things that will come in and requirements and work requirements, we try to do those as efficiently and effectively as possible.
Yeah, and you know, just from my own point of view, I mean, I am satisfied that the agency is able to deliver that regulatory role, that we have sufficient autonomy to deliver the regulatory role, and I think we're effective doing it. I think it's probably important just to make that point.
Thank you. Robin?
Thanks, Chair. Just following on from where Patsy started in regards to knotweed, giant hogweed, is there any role within the department for managing and controlling that?
Thanks.
I mean, it would be the same, covered by the same legislation, you know, as Japanese knotweed. It's another that does cause significant problems operationally.
If it's reported, whose responsibility is it to remove it?
It's the landowner's responsibility. The department's role would be in relation to the provision of advice, and you know, certainly in terms of Japanese knotweed or giant hogweed or any of the other invasive non-native species, we would have staff who would give advice. There's very good information on a number of the websites as well. So some of it would be, you know, personal, you know, advice that we would give.
So then, if it was actually found on land that was controlled by the department, is the department's responsibility to remove it?
It is, yes, yeah. And certainly
How quick?
Sorry. How quick?
Quickly would you remove it if it's reported to you?
I would have to check. It would probably depend.
Look at the circumstances, I think, and treat it on a case-by-case basis.
Are you thinking?
Right, and would a landowner have that same discrepancy?
It's their, as it stands at the moment, you know, it's their responsibility to deal with it. But it's, in terms of like the Japanese knotweed, say you lived beside land that was in another ownership, if they weren't removing it and if you felt it was having an impact, an adverse impact on your property, you would have, you know, speak to them obviously in the first instance. But if that wasn't successful, you would actually have to, you know, go to a solicitor and go through the, you know, through the legal process in terms of that. So it's not as if the landowner has to treat it, but if it's having an adverse impact, but that's down to an issue of civil legislation.
There's nothing that requires the landowner to remove it, but the landowner, they may wish themselves to remove it, in which case, you know, we would offer some advice in terms of how you
and
approach
it. And if it was on
that.
department land, would you just take that same attitude? Or would you just remove it as a matter of course?
I think again it'll probably depend on the particular circumstances. Like we would have a number of things. I'm certainly, you know, rhododendron would be another one that, you know, would be quite an invasive, and certainly we would have for DARA properties. There would be quite extensive rhododendron treatment programmes in place. I would have to check and come back to you in terms of anything specific. I'm not aware of us having any particular problems, but especially if you know of a particular instance, if you come back, I'll give you the detail on the, especially on the, you know, the giant knotweed or the giant hogweed rather.
Do you have a particular
concern?
Yeah.
And is it having an impact on an individual?
Well, it's more in its relationship to the public. And the fact that giant hogweed can cause burns if touched, especially for young children, walking down pathways that are formerly under NIEA control. Or
we do usually be quite quick. If it's somewhere that's near a pathway, we would either treat it or fence it off to prevent physical contact. But certainly, if we come back, we'll look at that very promptly.
Okay, thanks, Chair.
Just on that same point, are there any plans to look at that whole process, that it's a civil action between possibly two neighbouring landowners, because it's not a great solution, given that you may have a landowner who isn't in a position to do anything about the problem, and it's not something of their own making or their own doing. You may own a property which happens to have Japanese knotweed on it, which is now affecting your neighbour, but you're not in a position financially to deal with it, or otherwise you could be talking about a very elderly person who's living on a pension and, you know, struggling just to get by. It doesn't seem to me like a good way to deal with it, to be honest with you. I think that we should be looking at, is there something that could be done within the department?
I'm not aware of any plans at the moment to change the process, but revert to my colleague.
Yeah, I mean, other approaches have been used elsewhere. I mean, in England, I know that it is feasible to use antisocial behaviour orders in relation to invasive alien species. I don't think they're being used practically to any great extent because it's not a particularly easy process to use, but it's certainly something we can, you know, we can come back with a, you know, just to let you know what the different approaches are. If that would be helpful to the committee, just to sort of set out a briefing on it at some point.
But at the moment, I'm not aware of any plan where we would step in and address the problem. I appreciate the point you're making, that in some cases a particular landowner may find themselves with the problem, and if it's affecting a neighbour, you get into that kind of neighbour dispute. I think in those cases we will offer advice about how you remove the problem rather than assume the responsibility ourselves within government. But happy to summarise, if it helps, as Dave suggests, just how other regions perhaps deal with the problem and deal with a situation like that.
I would like to see that. I'm not sure I'd want to see antisocial behaviour. I'm talking about assisting people who find themselves in that situation,
rather than something that
not punishing them further.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, because no, I don't think anybody would actually go out and seek to plant it in their garden. So I think it's a situation that everybody finds themselves in that is unwanted. It's never a case of somebody actually wanted this on their property.
We are aware of some individuals, you know, cases where it has become very difficult, and our role has been offering advice.
Certainly, if you referred there, Chair, to the planting of it, and certainly, you know, that would be prohibited by the legislation, the intentional planting of it. But very often, this is simply where it is already growing and it's moving. You know,
well, that's the point I'm making. I don't think that anybody would say, I would like to have that in my garden. So I think that we should be trying to assist people that find themselves in that very difficult situation, not punish them further. Okay, Harold.
Thanks, Chair. In relation to the Moboy waste, back to there, where the department recognises their site regulations weak, given the operator repeatedly broke this waste licence conditions. Now we discovered there's 516,000 tonnes of waste. Do we know the percentage of that waste which may have come across the border, and who will be responsible for the cost of that clean-up? Yes, and it brings you on to the point of what's the best way to manage this waste in regards to incineration or whatever. What is your plan, future plans and going forward? And the other thing, would it be safer, you know, would this waste be would contaminate more by the removal of it as opposed to it being static in the ground and walk away from it?
Yeah, well, I think
if I can ask just the response a brief of one more question to come in,
okay.
and the next one.
I'll let Chris pick it up.
First of all, it's not now 516,000 tonnes, because obviously, as we've done more work, we've discovered more accurately what might be there. It's still an estimate, but we estimate now something like 900,000 cubic metres. Subtlety there because the waste is layered. And so, you know, it's not easy to just say it's a tonnage, it's a volume, and then you can translate that according to density into tonnage. In terms of border, we have no evidence that actually any of the waste there has come from across the border. That's obviously in terms of the evidence we can determine, because the waste was macerated. So there were very few pieces of evidence there in terms of we could specifically say that comes from here, there, or anywhere else. We've been carrying out for the last year a detailed study on the remediation of the site. And you're absolutely right to say, you know, is necessarily digging it all up, taking it away. And believe you me, 900,000 cubic metres is an awful lot of material. The site is 1.4 hectares. 1.4 kilometres long, something like 33 hectares. The remediation strategy is looking broadly at 3 sort of possible solutions using best practice. One would be to cover the site and to collect the leachate, which is the liquid produced, and the gas. At the other extreme, it would be to look at, do you dig it all up and take it somewhere else? And then, of course, within that, you can do various bits and bobs. You know, some areas might need to be removed, other areas could be remediated in a different way. We took the previous committee, the Environment Committee, to actually see this site, and I think they found that extremely useful. And I'd like to take this opportunity to say that if this committee would like to go and see the site, we would be more than welcome to facilitate that, because I think it's only by truly seeing the extent of it, the topography, that one can truly understand, A, what's happened here, and have a detailed understanding of what might need to be the solution.
Just one supplement on the cost. Have you any idea what cost this will?
Yes, we have. You know, these are very broad figures at the moment. They're very preliminary costs, but just gives you some kind of ballpark. You know, at the bottom end, you know, cover and collect, you could be talking in the region of 20-25 million. To dispose, dig up all this waste and take it away, you could be talking in excess of £100 million. But that is all part of this study, is to refine that and to get a detailed remediation strategy which will be properly costed. We haven't completed that process. And the last thing is there is a stakeholder group which we have formed of local interests, people who have some interest in the site, whether they be bodies or individuals, and we meet regularly with them to give them updates on what is happening.
Thank you. Oliver?
Just very quickly, and if you want to come back to me with an answer, you can, I don't mind. There used to be a problem getting rid of waste from round bales, you know, the plastic waste. Is that still the case, or can we now dispose of that at home, or does that still be shipped out to Scotland?
I need to clarify that there is what is known as residual waste, which is the stuff that is not able to be recycled.
The plastic waste.
The plastic covering.
Around bales.
Oh, I see. From farms.
Yeah.
If we need to check on that,
I'll come back to you on that.
We'll give a written response.
And just on your report here, just reading here that the NIEA is to conserve and promote the natural environment and built heritage. Is built heritage not under communities now?
It has moved, yeah. Yeah. The built heritage aspects have now moved to the Department for Communities.
This department here.
I'm not sure what you're reading from, Oliver, but...
Okay.
It's our briefing notes.
Okay, yeah. No, you're right. Built heritage has moved to the Department for Communities.
Thank you.
Okay.
You come back to me now.
Thank you, David. Thank you, all of you, for the briefing. Thank you very much.
Okay, and we'll follow up on the various areas where we've agreed to provide written additional briefing. Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Our next item is we will be getting an oral briefing from the Food and Farming Group, and there's Kirk's memo on page 44 of your pack, and there's organisational chart and summary overview considered at the meeting 2nd June. It's on pages 54 and 55.
I think we have 30th and then yeah.
5-minute turns. Yeah, 5 minutes. 5 minutes of speech for each report.
The type of no, that's okay. Then just
I'll just have to be very strict. Okay. Can I just welcome Norman Fulton, Deputy Secretary, and his team, Pauline Rooney, Colette McMaster and Martin Hendry. And if we can ask that you can keep your presentation brief to about 10 minutes, and then we'll allow members to ask questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Chair. So what I want to do this morning is to really provide you with a broad overview of the work of the group. So overall, the group staff complement around about 800 and a budget of about £105 million net, although it administers a much larger CAP budget, and we'll maybe come on to that later. So 5 divisions within the group, and I have 3 of them with me here this morning. So Martin McKendry, on my far left here, Director of CAFRE, Colette McMaster, Director of Food and Farming Policy Division. On my right, Pauline Rooney, Director of EU Area-Based Schemes. And 2 other divisions is the CAP Policy Economics Division, and you would have met Paul Caskey, Director of that last week. I think he was up talking about ANC support. And finally, there's the Science, Evidence and Innovation Division, led by Alistair Carson, who's also our Departmental Scientific Advisor. So what I'll do is give you a quick overview of the work of each of these directorates, and start off with CAFRE, responsible for competence development for those entering or already in the agri-food industry through development and delivery of a range of education and lifelong learning programmes. Operates across 3 campuses, Greenmount focusing on agriculture, horticulture and land-based sectors, Loughry focusing on food technology, with business for agri-food and rural enterprise there as well, and skill in focusing on equine provision. So Education Service covers the full remit of FE and HE provision, approximately 1,800 full-time and part-time students across the 3 campuses, delivering courses from level through right through to honours degree, and indeed a master's provision as well. The Development Service at CAFRE delivers training and development to those within the agri-food industry. And just to give an indication of the scale of the delivery, in 14-15, around about 12,500 people participated in the programmes, with 2,500 achieving level 2 qualifications or higher. CAFRE Development Service also delivers the Level 2 Agricultural Business Operations Programme, which meets an eligibility requirement for CAP Pillar 1 for those wishing to claim young farmer support or apply to the regional reserve under the young farmer new entrant category. In 2015, there was almost 2,500 young farmers who went through that course, and 2016, over 500 went through that. So CAFRE also delivers knowledge transfer elements of the Farm Business Improvement Scheme under the RDP, and currently almost 3,000 farmers have signed up to the business development groups, and CAFRE also oversees the Family Farm Skills Programme for those farmers not in a position to sign up to the business development groups, covering areas such as health and safety, business planning, animal health, and I think one of the first ones was a pig health training initiative under the programme. So moving on to food and farm policy, covers a very broad range of responsibilities under Colette across the food and farming sectors. I'll just really try to pick up some of the more significant one. So Going for Growth, I'm sure the committee is aware of the Going for Growth report. The division provides the departmental lead to the Agri-Food Strategy Board in helping them develop and deliver the executive's response to the Going for Growth report. Working closely with colleagues from the Department of the Economy in monitoring and reporting on progress, and indeed delivering on some of the components of that report. And that includes significantly policy lead on the Farm Business Improvement Scheme and the Agri Processing Investment Scheme, both of which are delivered under the Rural Development Programme and a significant component of the Going for Growth strategy. Collects Division also is sponsor for the Livestock and Meat Commission, which recommends improvements in the marketing of red meat and red meat products from Northern Ireland, and sponsors the Agricultural Wages Bill, setting minimum pay and conditions for agricultural workers in Northern Ireland. And finally, the division also acts as the managing authority for the Rural Development Programme. That includes organisation of the RDP Monitoring Committee, liaison with the EU Commission, reporting on progress on delivering the programme, oversight of monitoring and evaluation of the programme, financial monitoring, etc. So that's just sort of a quick coverage of food and farming division. So moving on into EU area-based schemes under Pauline, responsible for the administration and implementation of various CAP area-based schemes. So that will include the basic payment scheme, greening payment, young farmers payment, operation of the regional reserve, implementation of the areas of natural constraint scheme, and implementation of the agri-environment programme. So that covers the breadth of schemes there. So it covers all aspects of operational policy, application processing, verifications of applications, inspections, payments, so the full end-to-end delivery of those schemes. A very important function within the department, very important for the industry. In total, administering around about £280–290 million of support to the industry per annum across all of those measures. So it's a very important part of the work of the department. If we can just then cover the final two then, Science, Evidence and Innovation Division, which provides oversight of the department's science agenda and sponsorship of the Agri-Food and Biosciences Institute. So the science agenda covers both R&D and non-R&D components. The latter is primarily statutory, diagnostic and analytical work linked with animal health and plant health and food safety, but also the science around marine. The R&D agenda covers agri-food competitiveness, rural development, animal and plant health and environmental issues. So again, covering the full scope of departmental interests. And this is commissioned by the department from AFBRI under the Evidence and Innovation Programme each year, and it's a very important component of the department's work. The division is also building its collaborative links with other research providers. It has a long-standing and successful partnership with AgriSearch, but is now involved in new initiatives involving the Department of Agriculture, Food and Marine in Dublin, and a new US-Ireland research initiative calls for that. We're issued just 3 weeks ago, so that's a very new initiative. These collaborative links are all seeking to lever in additional R&D funding and to maximise our access to world-class science through these additional programmes. Finally, then, just to cover CAP Policy and Economics and Statistics Division, the division took the lead on the whole CAP reform agenda. Obviously, a very significant volume of work under that. But our current focus is on the future of ANC support, ANC designation, and the committee would have heard about that, the results from the recent consultation in that area last week. And also the possible future of coupled support out to the end of the current CAP reform period. Division also provides economic advice and analysis for the entire department and conducts a range of statistical surveys and publications covering the full remit of agriculture, food and the environment, so a very broad remit there as well. So what I've tried to do very quickly is just give you a flavour of the breadth of the issues covered by the group, trying to really pick up on some of the key areas. Obviously there's a lot more goes on, maybe a little less prominent, but no less still important for the department. But really now happy to throw it open to the committee to take questions on any aspect of the work that we do.
Thank you very much, Norman. Just, I suppose one of my first concerns would be, I know that there had been a commitment that if 70% of the applications for, excuse me, were done online, that there would be possibility of advance payments. Now, I'm aware through the papers that we have that it's 62%. Is there any notion of maybe reducing that down to a lower percentage, given that obviously it's a major issue for our rural communities that they don't have access to broadband?
Yep.
And we have no way of even assessing that. So, you know, of how many farmers aren't able to do it online because they cannot get access to broadband.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, by 2018, we're required to have 100% of applications on our geospatial system, application system. So that's required under the regulations, so we need to continue to advance that. I mean, we have made significant progress and significant advances over the last couple of years, and we need to continue to do that. It is possible, and if you take the example of Wales, for example, it's now 100% online as of this year. I mean, I think they only got 15 paper applications this year, so it shows you what can be done. There are many advantages for going online, both for applicants and for the department, in terms of reducing error for applicants and speed of application, speed of processing, and speed of getting payments out. So there are many advantages to this, as well as, I suppose, around the whole control issue as well. So we need to continue to advance that agenda. Yes, we are aware of concerns around broadband, and I think the committee may be looking at the results of the EQIA later on this morning, where you've seen the responses to the consultation, and there's views from the department on that. So yes, we recognise that we do have to assist farmers in moving online, but there's so many advantages to be had. And I say we have to be 100% assisted online by 2018. It's a regulatory requirement from the EU regulation.
Okay, but I'm sure you accept that that is a requirement on the department as much as anything. So therefore, in order to assist the farmers, because I raise it continuously, I've raised it in the chamber and I raised it previously through council around the rural broadband issue. And if you don't have access to broadband, the simple reality is, how do you then apply online? And I suppose just on the back of that, then, how vital would you say it is that we retain our direct offices in areas? Because if for those farmers who do not have access to broadband, that really is their next stop.
Yeah, I mean, there are multiple ways in which farmers can access online. Yes, direct offices are one possibility. Could also look at libraries, and they're much more widespread. And there are many more of those than there are direct offices. Obviously, many farmers use agents to actually input the data for them. So there are a range of possibilities, and we're referred to some of those in the EQIA document that you have before you. So we recognise that there's no one answer for everyone. So there will be a range of possibilities here.
Just in terms
but I suppose the other thing, maybe just to finish off on that, it's also, I suppose, in terms of our systems to ensure that they require the minimum bandwidth, so that you don't need fast broadband to actually complete. And I suppose that's something that we will design into our systems to ensure that you don't need fast broadband to actually tap into the system.
Just in terms of libraries, I think you would accept that many of our farmers need help when it comes to filling in these forms, and that can very often be somebody in the family or a friend or whoever.
Absolutely.
You won't necessarily be able to say, come on, we have to go along to the library, because library opening times are limited, especially, again, in rural areas.
Yeah,
but I don't think that's maybe the answer to our ills. Harold?
Yes, thanks, Chair. With 118 targets within the action plan of going for growth, are we meeting them 118 with taking farming as it is today?
Yeah, there's a very broad range of recommendations, and there's actually the Agri-Food Strategy Board published its progress report in March, I think it was.
Yeah, just published beginning of April.
Oh, April, yeah.
Yep.
So substantial progress against many of those recommendations. Do you want to pick up on some?
Yeah.
There are 118 recommendations, and quite a number of those fall to government. Some of those are industry-led recommendations as well. So we have, as part of our working together with the Department for the Economy, we are monitoring the progress of the actions against the action plan. There's a Northern Ireland Executive endorsed action plan, and then the Agri-Food Strategy Board are leading on the industry-led actions. So there is considerable progress made. I mean, of those actions that are in there, some of them are major actions, and some of them are sort of more smaller type of actions for our department. The big actions were to have a farm business improvement scheme developed, and that's what we're taking forward as part of the Rural Development Programme. We're designing a farm business improvement scheme, so it's a package of measures in that programme. It's launched with the knowledge transfer measures, and we're working on developing other parts of that programme to roll that out in future. Other big recommendations for us were in terms of looking at land use, and there's been a land use strategy working group working on that. We had a recommendation relating to TB, and there's been a TB strategic partnership forum to work on that. So those are just some of the major things. I mean, working to facilitate access to new markets for trade was another one. So a lot of the major things, there's very good progress being made across the department. We're continuing to monitor that, continuing to monitor progress and to drive forward just on actions. So there's, as Norman said, the report that was published, which it was published just out, it's at the beginning of April. It gives a flavour for where things are at in terms of the whole action plan and the recommendations of the board.
Okay. Patsy?
Thanks very much, Chair. Coming back to the areas you were talking about there, the area scheme for young farmers and the participation by young farmers in the scheme, the 2,500, I think you said had gone through and availed of the scheme. Could you just tell me, you mentioned the areas of natural constraint and agri-environment and the like. Could you tell me the level of EU support for those?
Well, maybe just to clarify on the young farmers, that was the number of people who went through the training.
Yes,
regime.
for the
yes.
Uh-huh.
In terms of the support for agri-environment, what's programmed into the RDP, I believe, is about 165 million. I think is within the approved programme. So it's that's currently what's been approved by Commission over the lifetime, and that's split, I suppose, between contracts coming forward from the old programme and what will come through into the new environmental farming scheme.
All right, good. And then getting over to the going for growth strategy, I presume there's elements of it which are supported from EU funding sources as well.
That's correct. Yeah. Yes, the Rural Development Programme actually is a very significant delivery vehicle for some of the major recommendations from Going for Growth. The Farm Business Improvement Scheme, the knowledge component is being funded under the RDP, the capital investment component, again, RDP. So yeah, it is a significant delivery vehicle for Going for Growth.
For Going for Growth. So how much, maybe you don't know off the top of your head, how much is invested in that entire programme?
The entire...
from EU sources? For the Going for Growth?
Right. The total amount that was linked to Going for Growth, I think, was 250 million thereabouts, but that's a split of national and EU funding, and it's a very significant portion of that is actual national monies.
Sure, we can get maybe a breakdown of that.
Yes, provide a breakdown of the amounts that are EU as part of that.
That's okay. All right, Chair. Thanks very much.
Okay, Robin.
Thank you very much, Chair. 2,500 young farmers who've attended the training normally? Many passed it?
The vast majority did it.
Yeah, it could be definitely over 96%, like 97%.
Many of those were specifically to get access to the young farmers' payment schemes.
Well, I think it was obviously the driver. We asked that farmers who would be coming forward to the Young Farmers Payment Scheme or to the Regional Reserve had a minimum of a level 2 qualification. And obviously that was a driver then for farmers to come forward. So
there was no real reason to do it unless you were going for that.
Well, I think probably some farmers did.
Some farmers did, but it would have been a minority.
Yeah, but I think
majority were.
And what this did do really was really to bring a whole new clientele forward who had never engaged with the CAFRE programs previously. I think that was a very positive thing, and I think certainly the feedback from those who took part in that programme was very positive, and indeed some now have decided to go on to level 3 programmes, even though there's no requirement for them to do so, but they see the benefit in their business.
Numbers for that,
well, we would have thought there's something around, maybe not to be held, there's somewhere around 400, 450 have come on through groups and that. But I could give you exact figures around that.
No, it's good to see that there wasn't just specifically techniques on the farm thing.
Yeah. No, I think people really did appreciate, it will make a real difference to their business.
In regard then to other training out of the minute, farm family key skills.
Yes.
That's out there. There's a section in it that I think is for the CDM, the construction design and management, part of that training.
Yeah.
To deliver that training, that whole skills thing, there's no longer a requirement to hold health and safety certification to actually deliver CDM training. Is that correct?
The CDM is a broad awareness, or the health and safety programme as part of Farm Family Key Skills, broad awareness programme, pitched at about level 3. It encompasses a lot of health and safety issues on farm, practical issues, and part of that is actually creating the awareness around what the CDM regulations will mean for farmers who are coming forward into the capital scheme or the BIS scheme. So it is not delivering CDM regulations as such at that level. It's actually creating the broad awareness of what would be required by a farmer to meet those regulations if he goes forward on the BIS. So it's part of a package of health and safety. It's not actually just specific to that.
And sorry, Chair, I think one of the things that has concerned the industry and has concerned this committee in the past has been health and safety on farms. Can I ask, why did the department remove the requirement for the trainers to be health and safety certified, which was actually in the original tender, to now that it's not retired? So we're going to have a Farm Families Key Skills where farmers are going to go along for health and safety training, but there's no longer a requirement for the training deliverer to be health and safety certified.
Well, as I say, the programme, as we have it at this stage, is a broad awareness programme at that level, at level 3. The number of you can actually achieve a qualification out of the Farm Family Key Skills programme. The health and safety component is about 3 points, where you require 10 to get a certificate. So on that bit, in terms of the awareness and the previous programme that was delivered under Farm Family Key Skills, required people purely at level 3. So in the previous programme, we didn't have a requirement to be specifically holding a health and safety qualification at a higher level. And we feel that because it's of the practical nature of it and the broad awareness training, that it will be open to people to deliver that training. If we want to lift it up another level with further training, yes, we would be asking for IOSH qualifications at that stage.
I come from an oil and gas background, and I would never put anybody, or we would have never put anybody in industry. And to even saying you have a basic health and safety training, if it had been delivered by somebody who didn't have a certificate to back up what they were training in, especially in regard to health and safety. and considering the number of fatalities we haven't had on farm at this moment in time. Level 3 is the equivalent of what, Martin? Sorry.
Level 3 would be equivalent to national diploma.
Quality, right.
Or
A-level?
skills training.
A-level?
Yeah.
A-level?
Yeah.
So, they'll, so you're part way towards an A-level in health and safety?
Well, it's not an A-level in health and safety.
It's an A-level equivalent. Caffrey's content they're being taught by somebody that has no professional qualification in health and safety.
Well, I mean, as part of the development of the programme, I mean, there's health and safety executive people there, so the package has all been put together by the Farm Safety Partnership, so that has been agreed.
But I suppose that's where I'm coming from. Initially, when that tender was put out, that requirement was there for trainers, but then subsequently it was removed.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that would have been removed in consultation with Health and Safety Executive.
Right.
They're happy with the level that we're pitching at within the programme.
Okay. Not content, Chair, but I think there's a I think there's a gap there. Can I just ask in regard to payments then? Where are we at with basic farm payments?
For this year?
Yeah.
We have about 25,000 applications in for basic payment this year. We have started inspections on those, and we'll process right through to the end of the year to make as many payments as we can.
Okay. Many remote aerial inspections are we?
We'll have 6 zones this year, which is 2 more than last year. So that's to try to distribute, the concentration of the inspections a bit more than we had. So there's 6.
They're working all right?
Yeah, no, they are. We're out and we're operating already.
Okay, thanks, Chair.
Just on the back of both of those subjects, first of all, in terms of the young farmers training, is there any specific assistance for anybody with any type of learning difficulty?
Yeah,
There is.
and anyone who comes onto the programme and registers under SENDO, we provide the support to them, whatever those learning difficulties may be, and have done for.
And just in terms then of the inspections and the basic farm payments, you don't actually know that you're not getting your payment until you check your bank and find out there's no payment there. Why can somebody who is being inspected not be given notice? You are being inspected, there may be a delay in your payment, because all of the people who rely on them then to pay, it has a big knock-on effect for them into the following year. If you're talking about having to get supplies, I'm particularly thinking about things like farm chemicals and things like that you need to assure your farming for the following year. And if you have no notification that you're not going to get paid, you have no opportunity to try to put in place anything to protect yourself. And I'm not saying that there is even a way of putting something in place for a lot of these farmers, but banks are not giving any leeway at the minute to farmers. So if they say, my single farm payment will be in by December, don't worry, everything will be fine, and it's not, the bank almost in all cases immediately says, no more leeway, your overdraft is done. And all of the people who are waiting on payment are pretty much in the same position where they're saying, no, if you haven't got it, we have no assurance you're going to get it. If they've been able to give them some form of notification said, I'm being inspected, I may not be paid until January, possibly even February, and hopefully not going beyond that, but I do know of a specific case where it was March. I think that those people deserve at the very least some type of notification to be able to protect themselves.
I know that was certainly the case a number of years ago, Linda, and that concern was raised. I think it was actually raised at this committee, and we did actually start to write to farmers who were inspected. It used to be years ago when you just did classic inspections on the ground, everybody knew who was inspected because there had been somebody there. And when you introduce remote sensing, then if there's nothing unclear, we don't have to go out and do a rapid field visit. We'll have to do quite a lot of those, but we don't have to do that. And so there was that concern that people may not know that they had been inspected. Now, in the last 2 years, we have written to everybody who has been inspected in November and advised them of that and of the potential implication that may have an impact on when you would get paid. We have paid more and more over the last number of years. I think we paid about 78% of inspected cases last December. So it is a smaller, we're trying to do everything we can to reduce the number that were impacted by that. And we'll do that. There's a balance to be struck in that we can't inform people beforehand that they're going to be inspected. So if we're going to carry out rapid field visits, you can't provide a lot of advance notice. So that's why there is a balance to be struck when we can send those letters. But we do send them now, and we do send them at the earliest time that we think we can.
Okay, thank you.
Oliver?
Yes, and thank you for your presentation. The appeals process, Norman, still very slow in turning around. A man whose payment stopped, he has to appeal. It's still taking months. And that's again something basically the chair was talking about, this thing about payments to the banks, etc. Can we do anything for a quicker turnaround on appeals?
Yeah, I think that's what we are trying to do is look at processes around the appeals to see can we streamline that and move it forward. It's a two-stage appeal process, so it is very much there to give, I suppose, maximum opportunity for people to actually present their case and have it heard. So there's a balance to be struck in all of this. Well, you want to?
Yeah, so I think, Oliver, this year is probably a particularly big year for appeals. I think every time you go through a new CAP reform cycle and you introduce new schemes and new things, you get more people that end up in the appeal process. That's certainly what happened the last time, and that's what happened this time as well. I mean, we have put more resources into addressing the stage 1 review of decision than we had before to try and process the requests that we have as quickly as we can. And we are succeeding. It's just there are a lot.
Yes, sir.
But we'll continue to do that and try to get through them as quickly as practical.
I know any that I've got quite a few, and some of them have come through the department for advice and that. And that advice I got is very good. I'm wondering how many of those appeals could have been sorted out before they go to appeal, with a little bit of lifting the phone and talking to each other, and maybe re-looking at paperwork or something, because there's two of mine that was sorted out very quickly because there was just an oversight on the paperwork, and that could be done without going to appeal. I think the appeal process, I think we're going into the appeal process too quick. I think we should look at have a second look at it before we actually do go to appeal, if that can be taken on board. Have you talk about climate change? The Environment Department are talking to the UFU on the effects on farming and climate change. What's your take on it?
Well, I mean, we have the strategy in place, efficient farming, and I mean, we're all part of the one department, I have to point out at this stage, and so yes, we have a common view. Climate change will pose challenges for agriculture, there's no doubt about that, across, animal health, plant health, extreme weather events. There's such a potential wide range of impacts from climate change, and yes, I think you probably heard some of that from Robert Huey the other week, just in terms of the potential animal health issues, even things like blue tongue and the range, sort of the encroachment of new diseases because of changing climate, effectively. Yeah. So yeah, it is a long-term challenge for the industry, and it's about, I suppose, starting to think in long term. How can the industry maybe adapt to some of those challenges in the years ahead?
Yes.
But these are very long-term effects that we're looking at here.
And my last question is, this is one of my hobby horses. Agents that we have for form filling, they have their own association.
Yes.
And we keep a list of them to hand out. Should those agents, they do a good job, etc., but should there not be more regulation built around them? Because if an agent makes a mistake, that mistake is still down to the farmer. The farmer still has no cover. And quite often the farmer, in fact, if he takes an agent on, he's dependent on the agent to fill in correctly. But if the agent makes a mistake, that mistake is the farmer's, not the agent. So the farmer will get penalised. Surely those agents should have insurance cover, at the very least. In the event of something happening, then the farmer does not be out of pocket.
Yeah, I don't think this is an issue of regulation. I think this is where farmers need to ensure and satisfy themselves that if they're using an agent, that agent is is fully aware of his obligation, but also carries professional indemnity insurance. And I think that's something that farmers should be asking of anybody who's completing the form on their behalf.
But if we hold the list, the department, and we're giving that list out to farmers, then the onus is on the department to ensure, surely, that those people have got the added cover.
I think it really does come down to the individual farmer to ask the question and to satisfy themselves that if something does go wrong, that the
department
agent...
not ask the question before they give out the list?
Well, we're not employing the agent. The farmer's employing the agent.
But we're giving the agents out to the farmers. We're recommending them in a way to the farmer.
I don't think we do.
Sorry, Oliver, I'm not aware that we do that.
Oh, why, you have a list for, I've seen it here in papers. Yeah.
Certainly, we wouldn't recommend. We don't have a recommended list as such. You know, it may be for information, but I think really farmers, the agent is their agent. They're employing the agent, so they need to really ask the question around professional indemnity. Should anything go wrong?
And I've heard very, very good reports on your young farmer schemes on the education side of it. We've now got a new educated group of young farmers coming out. They're very pleased with it, from what I hear.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, good to hear.
Just on the back of Oliver's point there, can you just check for our, I suppose, for our information, if there is a list there, if there is a list, I do think there is an onus on the department to check if those people have insurance, because it's the same as saying the housing executive give a list of builders whenever they're given a grant.
Right.
Now they have to have a certain
regulation.
There's they have to be regulated. That is not to say that if something goes wrong with that builder, that it's the housing executive's fault. It's not. But what they do is ensure that if something goes wrong with that builder, that the builder can be held accountable and can be held responsible, because you have to accept a certain amount of responsibility if you're prepared to give a list of names. I think, from my point of view, if I was sitting as a farmer and a list was given to me by the department of people who could assist me in filling in my forms, I would take it that the department had done a certain amount of checking there. And
we'll check if we do.
And I may take
list.
that wrongly or rightly, but the point is, I would assume that for the department to be holding them on their list, that they would see them as being, a good option for me.
Okay, we'll check out that issue on whether we actually do have a list or not. We're not aware that such a list was being handed out.
And I'm not saying that you shouldn't hold the list or give it out any longer. I think it's, as you said, it's a simple question to ask, so the department could ask it just as easily as the farmer. David?
Thanks, Chair, and welcome to the team again. Can I go back slightly to the Going for Growth issue? It's more a point than a question. If I remember correctly, we had a vast ministerial fanfare at Balmoral 3 years ago. A strategy was announced. There then appeared to be nothing very much happened for a while. Now, I accept that things do need to be done in the background, and that doesn't mean that nothing was actually happening.
Yeah.
But in the context that we're expecting a new strategy to be making a real difference, there was an impression that nothing much was going. I still don't know what we've got in terms of real joined-up action between DERA and Department for the Economy, what the role of the Strategy Board is in terms of driving things forward, what the budget commitment is. I think it would be very useful to get a briefing, which might mean we need the Strategy Board here rather than just relying on Colette to relay their work second-hand. But I do think it's such a crucial part of what we're seeking to do that we will need to see some detail on it. That's it. That was just a point. If I could then ask a more specific question, I'm pleased that within the group we now have both direct responsibility for CAFRE and the sponsorship of AFBI and other elements of scientific research. But there also seems to be a real issue as to how we get the value of that research into the more informal aspects of education, the farm walks, the one evening courses, the kind of thing which attract the people who are already engaged. Agri-research has been doing a fair bit of it recently, but it does seem to me that there's been a slight rowing back in the amount that CAFRE would have been sponsoring, whether on CAFRE premises or on other farms. It may be that's part of what has had to be a bit of a cutback compared to the full-time education, which is clearly also important. But can you give us an assessment as to how much is able to be done to ensure that that research becomes valid on farms and doesn't just stay within the academic community?
I'll maybe pick up on that one, David. The agri-research farm walks that would be delivered would also have a CAFRE component to them. So CAFRE, AFBI and agri-research work together to deliver those farm walks, and have delivered a number of good ones across the dairy sector and across suckler, beef and sheep. The programmes going forward and getting this rolled out onto farms and getting research adopted and the innovation component of it is critical to the delivery through the development groups, the business development groups. So that's a committed 5-year programme that all the farmers in the programme are participating on. We see that as an excellent vehicle to get the adoption, specifically on those 3,000 or 2,950 farms. Second part of it is how we get it adopted much wider within the other 22,000 farms as such. And definitely our work along with agri-research and AFBI around farm walks, our own CAFRE technology transfer, in terms of open days, and in terms of on-farm work as well is a very important component. But also linking it to FBIS, and there's actually an innovation measure there, which should be developed up, and that should, in a way, focus at farms, demonstration farms out within Northern Ireland, where other farmers outside of groups can come and see the latest innovation and potential for technology adoption. So probably your comment there to see some of these working their way out is important, but they are in the pipeline. But I can say that the CAFRE component to ensuring adoption, ensuring research outcomes get out onto farm we're very committed to it. It's very far up our agenda, and working with others to do that.
I think you're absolutely right. In terms of the flow through of research, CAFRE is vital, because if we are paying for research and that's not happening, it's clearly not good value for money. And more broadly, we are looking at ways in which AFBI and CAFRE work together and can work more closely together, including the potential for AFBI scientists to actually start to help to deliver some of the HE provision. So it brings the scientists into the classroom, which I think is a very positive thing to do. Looking at the estate and how we can actually treat, I suppose, where AFBI and CAFRE farmed estates, treating it as a single farmed estate, and how we can look at sharing the facilities. And I think there's great scope there to do that and expose students more directly to the science and vice versa. So I think they're on the food side, actually having the food scientists co-located with the technologists at Loughry. So I think there are things that are happening there that are trying to ensure that we do knit the parts of the knowledge chain, if you like, the pipeline together more closely and maximise the benefit.
I particularly think it mentions 28,000 farms, a fair bit of that sector will be part-timers, so I declare personal interest. And it's how you ensure even that knowledge is out enough in advance that people can plan to be available for an afternoon or an evening.
Yeah.
Okay, Patsy?
Yeah, Chair. Thanks very much, Chair. Just one thing, whenever it comes to the basic payments, there was one or two maybe embarrassing glitches last year and difficult for the farmers themselves, where the amounts of money came over to the money to be refused by the bank. I hope that difficult and embarrassing situation won't recur again. Have you put in place measures to do it? I'll balance that out by saying I want to put on record clearly a number of the staff in Orchard House have been extremely helpful in sorting out situations too, so if you'd pass on my thanks to them as well, would you please, just?
Oh, I hope it has been addressed. It was a one-off. It affected, I can't remember, it was about 20 odd, I can't remember how many farmers out of all that we paid last year. So it was a small error, it shouldn't have happened. And we have put steps in place to make sure it doesn't happen again.
Oh, good. That's okay, right. Thank you.
And Harold?
Yes, Chair. Just back again to the appeals. Having sat on representing a farmer on appeals, and I wouldn't have represented that particular applicant had I been in any doubt. But to me, he poured out his honesty. And today, he has failed. What is the percentage of appeals that can be won successfully to the applicant?
I'm not aware off the top of my head what that percentage is. Certainly I can provide that figure to the committee. But I don't know, I couldn't, if I said a figure now, I couldn't just do over it, so.
Yeah, we'll come back.
And can you go any further beyond appeals? If you're beating appeals, is that it over? End of story?
Well, you have the opportunity to go to the Ombudsman beyond that. Certainly the second stage is the final stage within the department, and that includes that review by the independent panel. So the stage beyond that's the Ombudsman.
Oliver?
Thanks, Chair. Just ask a quick question on the rural development programme. There will, just to confirm that there will be stage payments this time for applicants.
To the leader part of the programme, I think, I think actually I would just like to get update and confirmation from colleagues who are dealing with that part of the programme, and come back to committee on that.
The leader aspect isn't delivered from this group.
No, but it
would
impact on maybe some schemes that farmers would go into in that area, or people do that. So I just wanted to know that there was talk of stage payments this time.
Yeah, okay. No,
Thank you.
No, find that out.
Thank you.
Just in terms of the EQIA, and can we just be kept updated on what the department's plans will be in terms of that, getting 100% of applications online, just so that we know what's happening, we can keep I suppose a close eye on it.
Okay, yep.
Robin, sorry.
Thanks, Chair. Sorry, just briefly, in regard to the remit of the new unit, in regard to farm gate prices, Norman, what are you envisage doing, or what have you?
Yeah, I think we have to recognise that this is not a Northern Ireland problem, a UK problem. It's a global problem. And the one thing you can say is we can't control markets. Government can't control markets. But what we have to look at is how can we equip the industry to deal with the volatility that is there, and it's going to stay with us. And there's no doubt about that. And that's part of what we have to address through our various knowledge programmes, and looking at equipping farmers to be as efficient as possible, to look at options around risk management on farms. These are things that farmers need to now be in a position to address, because are more volatile and they will continue to be more volatile. We know that. So it's really equipping the sector to deal with that, to cope with volatility. Some sectors are more familiar with that. Pig sector, for example, this is. Pig farmers have dealt with this over many years, and it really has spread across to other sectors as well. Dairying is going through a particularly difficult downturn, a prolonged downturn, and it's really how can farmers cope with that? What mechanisms can they deploy to take costs out? And certainly that's the feedback we're getting, is that farmers are taking real steps here to reduce costs within their business to cope with this sort of downturn. But I suppose going forward, when it comes into the capital investment programme, what we'll be asking is that this is on the back of farm investment plans. that has to be sustainable. And we expect that people coming forward with investment plans will have looked at the issue of volatility. Can they cope with downturns? We certainly don't want to take farmers into investments that ultimately they can't afford. So I suppose they have to stress test their investment plans. And I think also the banks would expect that as well, to do sensitivity analysis around their projections under their investments, so that if markets do turn down, they can continue to cope with the repayments and the return on the investment. And I think that's the responsible thing to do.
You mentioned the banks there. One of our major banks here in Northern Ireland, one of our major agri-banks in Northern Ireland, has recently sold off some of its agricultural lendings. Will that have a detrimental effect, do you think? Or because obviously if they're selling them off, they see them as a major risk.
Well, I think it's really getting into a commercial issue here. So I don't think we're really best placed.
Would that be something in the department would look at then from an applicant, if their debt had been sold on by the Ulster Bank or our bank? Sorry.
Well, I think more generally we'll have to look at the viability of any business that's coming forward and the viability of the business plan. And we're certainly not doing anybody any favours if the plan is not a viable plan, if the investment actually will not actually improve the bottom line for the business, which is what it should all be about. And if you actually have investments that are not viable, well, I would doubt they would get as far as us, because the banks wouldn't back them. So it's unlikely that the investment, and we'd like to think that farmers themselves haven't gone through the process and seen that, well, the proposal actually doesn't stack up. They wouldn't proceed anyway. That's the message from the analysis. So I think this is the value of going through that process, so that people go into it with open eyes.
Minimum pricing legislation, would that be an option?
I don't think it is an option, because at the end of the day we have to trade. And we have, so quite apart from the fact of whether we would be able to do that within a European framework, competition framework, but apart from that, we have to trade. We have to be competitive. And so setting minimum prices, I think, will just simply undermine our ability to compete and to be successful, and we have to compete. 70–80% of our produce is sold outside of Northern Ireland. So we can't cut ourselves off from those markets by imposing artificial prices.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Harold.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Norman, you did mention mismanagement. Obviously, here can read into mismanagement of the farmers, right?
Sorry, I don't think I said mismanagement.
Yes, you did say mismanagement of the farmers, mismanagement of their business.
Right, okay.
Shortcomings from what they're doing, obviously, maybe creating costs which shouldn't be there. My issue I see there, if a farmer can't read into, if he doesn't realise there's something he's doing that could minimise some of this burden, financial burden, what have you, and he could manage his farm in a different manner. Is there anything that the DAERA can do to come in behind, and not to be seen as DAERA coming in to do some inspection, but to assist them and guide them through, say, if you'd done this in some other way, you would have a better income, if you like, to make it simple.
Yeah, I think that's effectively any farm business, any business always have opportunities to develop and to look at ways of becoming more efficient and taking costs out. And that really is what the business development group process is all around. It's about peer learning. It's learning from each other within the group, as well as the input from the advisors, and taking on board new technologies into that. So that's really what that is all about. And I mean, if we draw on examples of how that has worked, for example, the dairy discussion groups in the Republic of Ireland, I mean, they've made very significant advances for the farmers within those groups. And we would have similar hopes and expectations as to what we can achieve from the discussion groups here. It obviously takes time because once you start sharing information, and that takes trust for the farmers within the group to build up to be able to do that. But I think peer learning is a very powerful way of learning and driving the business forward. Martin, do you want to?
Yeah, well, I mean, I suppose that was the rationale behind business development groups at the start, was seeing the benefits that had accrued in the south of Ireland and New Zealand and Holland and other countries that have maybe been a year or two ahead of us in this game. I think the other area, and maybe back to what David was raising earlier there, that there are 3,000, or got to 3,000 farmers in this 5-year programme. It's getting information out to other farmers as well. And what we would do and how we would pitch the open days or training events or knowledge transfer events would be around what are the key drivers on economics and business and technical efficiency that we're seeing from our benchmarking analysis. So we would analyse that data on an annual basis and say across farms, the use of grass, for example, the use of forage, decreased over a number of years, and we would put a focus on that area of work. Herd fertility is another area. Grassland management on beef farms. So we're seeing areas there where there's good technical efficiency that will drive business improvement on farm. And that would become the focus of a lot of our work, whether that would be in press articles, whether it would be on events, whether it would be agri-search, AFBI, CAFRE events, would be focused around those areas. I suppose the task that we have, and I mean it was raised by David there, is getting more people to those events more regularly to interact. We're quite happy we get these 3,000 if they will attend 8 training events per year for the next 5 years. It's getting others to attend these other events would be important, because they're very strong messages there where people can drive efficiencies in the business. That's really the crux of what we do.
I think, you shouldn't discount the informal learning opportunities, people within the groups, and people outside seeing, how other people within the groups are developing their businesses and changing their practices. I mean, it's just that informal networks, we shouldn't discount that as well. So, if you get a certain group leading the way, others will follow in behind whenever they see the advantages. So, neighbours talk to each other. So we shouldn't discount that as a means of learning as well.
Okay, can I just quickly ask before we finish, can you confirm when we're likely to hear that the Business Investment Scheme is open for applications?
Well, that's something that the Minister is currently considering, and an announcement will be made in due course, so I can't give a date today.
And you can come back to me with a written response on this. The Agri-Food Strategy Board were tasked by the previous Minister to look at the fairness of the supply chain. Can you maybe come back to us with even a written response on any updates in relation to that?
Supply chain forum. Okay, yes, can do.
The committee would like to have that information. Just to thank you for the briefing. Thank you very much for coming along. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Excuse me. The next agenda item 7 is the written briefing on the EQIA online as primary communication with farmers. Item 7 is a written briefing. You find it on page 57. Sorry, in your pack. And that's the Department's equality screening identified that its proposal to make online primary channel for communication with farmers could have a negative equality impact for a number of different groups. Therefore, this more detailed EQIA was carried out. A total of 261 responses were received to the consultation. The Department is currently considering its response to the issues raised on the consultation. That's really why I asked Norman if he could update us, whenever they know what sort of direction they might be taking in terms of that. Go ahead, Robin.
Chair, I think your point earlier on was valid, no matter what constituency you come across. I think we're looking at next Tuesday 2 debates about rural broadband. I think for our Department for Rural Affairs to be pushing online as their preferred option just doesn't make sense without that provision.
You know, and I understand that it would be the preferred option, if it would be the preferred option for all of us, but I think if we start putting this kind of, we're already, I'm sure you're all in the same position, we're already coming under pressure from our constituents saying, what are you doing about rural broadband? And if we're saying to them, we're sitting on a committee saying, you have to respond, you know, online, but we're not actually able to say what we can do in terms of rural broadband, I think you would find that we would soon be coming under a bit of stick, and I think it would be very well placed, to be fair. I do think it needs to be a priority for us, you know, as rural representatives, and trying to push forward that provision, and getting the economy minister to work closely, more closely than has been done in the past with the dairy minister. I think that unless they work together on this provision of rural broadband, we're not going to see any improvements in rural broadband.
Chair, can I propose we write to the dairy minister exactly state this committee's concerns?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I think we should put in that letter that we would like her to have a close working relationship with the economy minister in terms of trying to address the rural broadband provision issue.
Do we have up-to-date stats on what the figures are for rural broadband? We've all theoretically got broadband. It's when you've got a half a megabyte broadband, you know, it really might as well not be. And that seems to be the position that you know, there's talk about having had a 100% rollout. But it's a 100% rollout at a pretty pathetic level, which simply doesn't need that kind of form filling.
Up-to-date statistics.
Mm-hmm. And just there on page 59, paragraph 2.8, that EU requirement that 100% of applications are done in 2018, it might be worthwhile seeking an update about how far along that spectrum Northern Ireland is. Is that okay?
Yeah. Isn't it 62% or something?
Well, 62% of applications were made online this year, of the 25,092. So.
Okay, and I don't know really. I suppose the EQIA is one way of doing it, but I don't know how to find out why exactly, because there's going to be a multiple of reasons why people, broadband's certainly going to be a major one, but there are also going to be other reasons. I mean, you're talking farmers who maybe are aged people. And again, I mean, what I talked about in terms of the young farmers stuff, that we have many farmers who have learning difficulties, or who maybe didn't stay on at school and, you know, haven't reached an adequate level of reading and writing. So there are all those issues. So I think that we do need to be a close eye on this one. Any other comments on that?
Can I just make a comment? Sorry, Chair, I had to go out there a wee quick message. I don't know if it was mentioned yet or not, but it's the one that you brought up about the offices.
The Dairy Direct offices?
It was a question under one of the consultations that will people still have that contact? And I'm talking, I'm waffling here to see if I can find it. Yeah, here we are here. Maintain face-to-face contact, and it does say here, number 4, the option for face-to-face contact between DAERA staff and customers will be maintained. And where's the other one?
62.
And it also on number 7. On the cost of purchasing IT equipment, it states accepted. We will make steps to make computers available to customers in our offices. So it's the question you asked on the maintaining of the DAERA offices out there. It seems to be that they're saying here that those offices will be there for the use of the community.
I would just have a wee bit of concern whenever I did raise it, that I was told that there are more libraries, and there seemed to be a wee bit of pointing in that direction. Right. There will be other rural facilities. Certainly not too many libraries in our rural.
There's a question on libraries. And libraries now, yes, they're could.
Shutting them.
Pardon?
They're shutting them.
Well, not only shutting them, but there's a question there on privacy.
Right.
you know, you get a Dart office and you can speak to somebody there, that question doesn't raise, but if you get into a public domain, to start doing your business in public domain, it's a wee bit different.
Chair, if I could, on a similar vein to that, there's a whole issue around firearms certificate licensing as well, and they're trying to push that direction too, and they're talking about libraries and stuff too, so similar vein to yourself, Oliver, I don't think that would be the appropriate place to be putting your details, you know.
I was going to bring that up under AONB if we any other business.
Aye.
I think, you know, because I think it's something the committee should hear. Will be all right with that?
Okay, just I suppose in order that we can get some responses, because it's all very well us sitting here talking about it and all the issues that might arise. I think maybe we should ask for an oral briefing in terms of that online as primary communication with farmers.
And rural broadband, cover that as well, and the one briefing, I think the two link together.
Do we have research on it before?
I will ask research what they can provide for us.
Pardon me.
Are there any other comments before we move on to the next agenda item? Okay. Agenda item 8 then is the seed marketing regulations. We're now Act 2016. Proposal is at page 67 on your packs. The draft regulation is on page 71, and you'll also find a consultation response from the UFU on page 119 and a quality screening document on page 121. The main objective of the regulation is to consolidate 5 largely horizontal seed marketing regulations and the connected seed licensing and enforcement regulations into a single instrument. The Ulster Farmers Union was only responding to the consultation and was supportive of its proposal, and the rule is subject to the negative resolution procedure, and it is anticipated to come into operation on the 14th of July. Do any members have any comments on this?
No.
Oh, no. Okay. So you're happy enough that it proceeds to the next legislative stage? Yeah. Okay. Agenda item 9 then. SL1 policy proposal on plant health amendment order, and again proposal is on page 137 of your packs, and draft regulation on page 141, and the quality screening document page 149. Plant health directive is implemented in Northern Ireland by way of an order, and it implements protective measures against the introduction into the EU of organisms harmful to plants or plant products. The order is amended to take account of new risks, and the purpose of this order is to introduce emergency measures against
I wouldn't even try and
Epitrex, which, is that right, Epitrex?
yeah, it's some kind of flea beetle.
Okay. Which causes harmful effects to potato tubers, and to strengthen existing measures to prevent the introduction and spread of another harmful bacterium. The order is cross-cutting as it introduces a new offence which has been approved by the Department of Justice. However, in accordance with the Ministerial Code, it shall be submitted to the Executive following consideration by the Committee. Stakeholders were supportive of the proposals in the consultation. The rule is subject to the negative resolution and is expected to come into operation on the 30th of June 2016. Any comments? No. So take it that we're happy enough that it proceeds to its next legislative stage. Agenda item 10 then is a written briefing on the outcome of the consultation on the implementation of an EU regulation on invasive alien species. Okay, so the next item then, the paper is on page 167. The Department undertook the consultation from the 23rd of March to the 18th of May on proposed penalties to implement the EU regulation. 9 responses were received to the consultation, 3 of which provided no comment. The rest were supportive of the proposals. The Department proposes to make subordinate legislation to be in place by October 2016. Any comments, Harold?
Yes, it was very interesting there to hear that if an invasive species has become established,
It's not covered by this.
no longer
It's already
species.
invaded.
So in other words,
That's European regulations.
This is to My understanding of this is to impose penalties on the introduction of new invasive alien species.
Yes.
So if you were to introduce, this could not be used for existing invasive alien species.
Okay. All right.
Over that again.
It's to prevent the introduction of new species being introduced, not to
It can't be used for
to
something.
use for
already here.
existing
It's
ones.
already here.
Yes. So the flea or the one that we talk about, or well, no, that's not to get into that. It's a different.
Where they come from?
Flea beetles is
Carl,
different.
do you want back in there?
Ah,
No, you're happy?
I'm just puzzled over this
I
whole
know.
thing.
If you want, I can get somebody to give you a ring about it. If you need, just let me know, and I'll get the official to speak to you direct about it. And then if you want to raise it again next week, that's fine, or whatever. Okay.
Well, we have met, through council, we've met about invasive and how to seed it and spray it and cut it back and all sorts of things, but
Yeah.
it's quite strange that
It is. It is. It is. This is about the prevention of new alien species, but the whole plant health thing's under review, I think, in Europe anyway. But that's how useful it is another matter.
maybe part of it is down to regulation too, because I think we all know that various types of sprays are not what they used to be. And maybe if you were back to sprays you had 20 years ago, you could wipe out.
Aye.
You're not waiting in a month,
Agenda item 11 then is correspondence, which is on page 200. I'm going to let the clerk take us through it.
Okay, so just 3 items of correspondence. The first one on the public appointments is to note, we have the full papers in the office if you want. Northern Ireland Environment Link are requesting a meeting, and we're actually going to discuss that in a few minutes, and there's an updated note there from the Commissioner for Older People just to note. There's also an invitation in your table packet, page 3, from the Royal Society and the Northern Ireland Science Festival to the round table discussion on growing tomorrow's dinner, should GM be on the table. That was initially to be at 12:30 on the 30th, but because they've realised that there's a clash with this committee, they've moved it back to 1 o'clock on the 30th of June. So I think they're sending out notifications to everybody.
Just to inform members, I was asked if I would speak at that event as chair of the committee, and I have told them that I will speak, but that I can't speak as chair of the committee because the committee has not taken a position on this. So it would be not acceptable for me to speak on behalf of the committee on an issue on which we haven't discussed. So I have said that I will speak at it. I'm happy to attend and speak at it, but I won't be able to speak as chair of the committee.
Yeah, everybody else happy with the index sheet?
Agreed.
Agenda item 12 then is our forward work plan, and again I'm going to let the clerk.
Yes, just, well, I think the first thing to say is that we're no meeting next week, and the meeting after that, the 30th of June, is the last one before summer recess. We have the last head of the DARA group coming along, which is the Central Services and Rural Affairs. We were hoping that we had always that to be confirmed, that the Minister would be with the committee before summer recess, but the Minister has now confirmed that she's not able to attend on the 30th due to prior commitments. And instead of that, what I would be suggesting is that we have 3 major stakeholder groups. We have the farmers, we have the environmental groups, and we have the rural affair groups. And in order to have had a rounded view from them, we would have time for 3 short 30-minute briefings from those groups at this committee. So I'm talking about maybe Ulster Farmers Union, NIAPA coming up, asking them, don't tell us who you are, don't tell us what you do, members know that. Come up here and in 5 minutes tell us what your key issues are, and then 25 minutes of short, sharp questionings. Then the same for the Northern Ireland Environment Link, who represent most of the environment groups, and the same for the rural affairs groups. And I'll be looking at RCN, RDC and the local rural support networks coming together on that one. Now it would be short and sharp, Everybody would have to know to keep it short and sharp. But it would mean that you would have heard from the department, and then you would have heard from the major stakeholder groups before you go into summer recess, and then when we come back
Really
and start
before we
thinking.
do our strategic planning day, to have what the priorities are for all of these groupings. The one thing I will say is that we're going to be very tight to time. Everybody will get to ask one question and one question only, just because we are going to be. So I do try to give it.
Set the time limit for how long the question is.
And I do try to keep it free flowing, because whenever you have somebody coming in and giving a presentation that's very broad, it's very difficult to pick one question, and I accept that. So I try as best as possible to allow people to ask what questions they feel they need to ask. However, because this is going to be so tight, I am going to say that, you know, everybody will get to ask one question. If we have time to come back to somebody for another question, that's fair enough. But we will try to keep it very brief. Those who are coming to present are going to be told in advance that their presentations need to be extremely brief, and that their responses also will need to be brief. It's just to get, we want to give everybody as much opportunity, and we really just want to get what their priorities are, so that we know going into our strategic planning day what their priorities are, because what their priorities are going to guide very much, possibly, you know, in all probability, what our priorities will be. So I think that it's important that we do get to meet those three groups, that we get to hear from them. And particularly from my own point of view as a new member to this committee, it's extremely important for me to get a grasp of what really their priorities are. So I think if everybody's happy enough, that is what we will do for the 30th of June.
Okay.
Okay.
And then the strategic planning day, members, one of the groups that asked us to present to the committee was the RSPB. So I've been speaking to them, and I've come up with a solution, which is maybe that we hold our strategic planning day in the WOW Centre, which is just down the road here. So and at the end of the strategic planning day, we have a short presentation and a tour of their premises. So that would maybe handling both aspects of the strategic planning day and hearing from one of those other groups at the same time. And we've provisionally penciled that in, if you're happy, for Thursday the 29th of September, when we come back from the National Ploughing Championships. So if you are content with that, we would have our normal meeting slot, but it would be down in the WOW Centre, and they have will facilitate that for us, if people are happy enough with that.
Mm-hmm. What sort of timings do we think of? Is it
It'd be the normal
than usual,
10 o'clock for a start, finishing up with a working lunch with the RSPB people around about 12:30, 1:15, followed by a tour, and we should be away by 1:45.
Okay,
I'll work to that. Okay, and that's also part of the Environment Week that's going on here, so it's linking into that whole Environment Week thing as well.
Okay, anybody have anything they want to raise under any other business? Oliver?
Yes, just a couple of things. Just
Everybody?
I'll be very, very.
Get a clean sheet.
I'll be very, very quick there. One of the things on the Clara there was the appointments thing was on that there, and it's just a quick perception that it's nearly 99% male dominated in most of the committees. There's very, very few women on that there. And also, I think maybe at some stage we should be looking at the remuneration some people are getting on that.
Just to be clear, that was just for our information. It's not, you know,
That's the sort of thing we'd need to know, and but it's something we can look at again. But what I want to bring up today is on the EONB, is what Patsy mentioned earlier on. The PSNI have stated that they hope to move completely online applications for shotgun renewals for the licences. This includes everybody that holds a licence for a shotgun, farmers, sporting clubs, etc. Now, I've been lobbied by quite a lot of people from both sides, gun clubs and farmers, and I personally think this is wrong. I think we shouldn't go completely online, and they're talking about going completely online by, I think, July, August time or something like that, Patsy.
This year?
Yes, this year, yeah. Now, I propose that this committee writes to the Chief Constable and expresses our concern about this. I think there should be a lead-in period of maybe anything up to 5 years. You can go online, but the paper applications should still be there for a period of time if they want to go online. And also look at the model that they have in the south of Ireland for renewals for licences. It's a much clearer. But anyway, at the minute I'm proposing the committee who writes to the Chief Constable expressing concern about that.
Same issue.
Okay, so that's the same issue, Patsy. Just in terms of that, is that something that came from the department, or is that something that the
No,
Chief
it
Constable
came
has?
From PSNI.
I'm just thinking you might have known. Yeah, but-
No, it's not my fault, but it's the police initiative around saving costs because of the issue of the fee not being increased as far as it might otherwise have been increased.
But
An ex-minister knows that much.
They aren't actually saving money because they certainly earn more money here than they do in Scotland and Wales.
Constituency.
On
But
licence.
we can certainly represent your farmer, but Patsy wants in.
Here, if I just could come in on this as well, I know I've certainly been lobbied about this too, but I actually went to the PSNI down at the firearms licensing branch to go through the exercise. And I have to say, I found, now, I'm no computer whiz kid, but I found parts of it a bit tricky and a bit elongated. Now, what I'm saying there is there will be other people who are sports people who have a shotgun for vermin control or maybe a wee air rifle or something like that, who will be required to go through this, who mightn't just be at that level of computer literacy, or indeed, as you referred to earlier, may have learning skills issues and still be perfect at their sport. Now, this is going to affect and will affect a lot, particularly of the rural and farming communities. And as we know, as you referred to earlier there yourself, the Chair, there's an age issue there. Now, again, the same thing has come up. Sure, go to your local library and all that. That ain't going to work. And I think it would be helpful, I don't know, maybe through ourselves and the Committee for Justice to collaborate on this one, to try and work our way through. I can understand perfectly why they're trying to do it. Even what they're proposing isn't the simplest of things by their own admission. It has to go a sort of a triangular route in the computer system too, which doesn't make it easiest. So I think there has to be a better way of doing this. Haven't gone through it, it's just not the easiest of way to make an application.
Can you say, Patsy, on that, if you don't mind, when you talk about them, they are recommending going to libraries, there's a massive security issue there. Going into a public building to make an application for a gun licence. And I don't think that, I'm surprised that was even suggested.
Well, it's this, and among other things, they're doing a scoping exercise to see how they can do it, because I think they now appreciate there could be issues with it.
I think we should do a letter. It's probably not technically a DARE committee issue, but given that it will affect quite a number of farmers, then I think that it's fair enough that we should do a letter. David?
No, I'm really taking what Patsy said. I'm not sure necessarily at a joint meeting, but we should at least keep the Justice Committee involved in what we're seeking to do if they wish to follow up as well.
Yes.
It may become a joint meeting in the autumn time.
Could be, you wouldn't know.
There could be something the Justice Committee could write in to you about.
Sure.
Aye.
I would look forward to a panel on waste management, and entirely for waste management too. You know, in my time of council, one of the subjects was raised the most was, well, litter certainly, but dog waste. And whenever I made a few suggestions, I'm sorry, I would love to do that, but it's consoled by the hill. So the council's hands are tied in how they can control dog waste. And, you know, and right through to what is the plan? What's the future plan to get rid of this waste? You know, will they ever incinerate it? Are they just going to be content to ship it out, trying to protect their environment by shipping it out with the use of fossil fuels, and the whole thing's just certainly not adding up, as far as I'm concerned.
I think there needs to be a more joined up approach anyway between council and central government here on a whole range of issues, but particularly waste, you're right. And you could take up a lot of time because there are that many different views on how waste should be dealt with and all the rest. So really what you want to know is what is the plan for the future in terms of waste management. I would like to know what are the plans to work more closely with the councils and to have, I think if there was a better relationship between here and the councils, you would have more recycling happening for a start, because there would be a more strategic plan rather than every council just doing what they think.
I know there was even issues for a while around the fuel laundering and that waste and who was responsible. It was DOE and then it went to councils and it was costing, like I know Newry more, and I think in 1 year it cost 300 some odd thousand to dispose of that, and
We never came with it, yeah. I think, just from what I've heard over this last couple of weeks, I think waste, lots of different aspects of it is going to feature on the strategic priorities of the committee. So, without a doubt, I think it'll be up for substantial amount of work on it over the next.
I think that could be something.
Robin, you were
can be fed into the community.
Thanks, Chair. Just going back to the shotgun licensing. I know you said it wasn't under this committee's remit. Under the Rural Needs Bill, there's a remit to consult. Hold on, I get it. Public authorities. Public authority means, and there's a number of other things, if they change or revise policy, strategies or plans that may have an adverse effect on the rural population, and I think that's where we can get an input. Chair, if you don't mind, could I ask, Patsy, how if you're renewing a shotgun licence, do you put down the two landowners?
It becomes a wee bit, you have to put that, you just fit it in there, you type it in, you have to type that in.
But you don't need their signature anymore?
No, you put their details in, you just put their details in and that's verified with them. In the same way as, now this is the odd bit, it gets a bit more difficult in that you have to put down your two referees. You put down email address and a text for your referees. Now if they don't respond within 7 days, your application is nullified. So that's another bit of a complicated add-on to it. Say you have to check somebody's not going on holiday or, God forbid, going into hospital or anything like that, as it can lead to further complications. So it's a lot more thinking has to be done on it, particularly the layout of the commuter system. I was confused at one stage by what they meant, and I don't think I'm that slow as to be confused.
This is probably not really relevant to the committee necessarily. I do think in terms of the amount of farmers that it impacts, we should certainly write it, but
Chair, Robin does have a valid point there about the rural needs issue.
I agree with that. I think
the rural needs, it doesn't come into effect to PSNI, I think, until 2018, actually. I think it's
so they're getting it in before that becomes...
Before they have to do that.
If you don't mind, can I suggest that I'm quite happy to write a letter on behalf of this committee, copying in the Justice Committee to the PSNI, expressing concern about how this affects the farming community in terms of the age and the access to broadband, those issues that we've already identified, and that I'll say in terms of sending to the Justice Committee that a number of other issues were raised, which will need to be the Justice Committee to take those forward, not ourselves.
Can I just ask you include the security issue in that?
The aspect of privacy and security in libraries,
Going to public buildings.
I think we should actually just mention, given that Robin has raised it and he's right, and whilst it doesn't come in to be in until 2018, I think we should say that the Rural Needs Bill, and whilst there's not
legal onus, there's an
onus on them, that they're trying to get this in there before they have to abide by that.
I'll do that. That's okay.
Okay. That's us then. Our next meeting is Thursday.
I have another point about other business, which was around the issue that last week's agenda we were supposed to have the monitoring round on it. We got nothing on the monitoring round. We did point out at the time, I don't think any of us were aware at that stage that we were going to see the monitoring round statement by the Minister on the floor of the Assembly this week. Whilst there may have been issues about matters which needed to be signed off, and there are issues about how much can be shared in advance of that formal statement, the fact we got nothing at all, I think wasn't terribly helpful to us. And
I think we should speak to
we might delicately say, or possibly the Dallo might delicately say to people without us getting too formal about it,
that it would be nice to at least have had some information, even if it wasn't possible to get full information. And I realise why we mightn't be able to get everything.
No, I think we can have a conversation with the department about that, just in terms of what will be happening in the future.
Chair, I think it's I know David wants to be polite, but it's the fact there was no attempt made to get us anything today either, after it has been done and agreed. So, as a committee, we don't know what was bid for by the department.
Okay, well,
It might be worth asking. I know you don't want to be
given that
polite,
it's not on the agenda, I think we should probably come back to it at the next meeting, because it's unfair to the officials that we haven't, I suppose, specifically said to them, this is coming up in our CLAR and we want to know what's happening. So if we can come back, if we can put that on the CLAR for the next meeting.
Well, in fact, I can ask for the information of the monitoring round and an explanation from the department's point, just for a written brief, maybe for the next meeting.
Yeah.
The next meeting's going to be very long, members, and if you need to be out of here for one, and just saying there's a lot on it next meeting. So.
But as much as anything, it's not this one. It's trying to see how things are done in the future.
Yes, or October, I think it's now, isn't it? Yeah.
Or late January or something.
The October one's late.
Okay.
Yes.
So our next meeting then is Thursday, the 30th of June. We don't have a meeting next week as agreed. Is that fair enough?
Okay. Thank you.
The Northern Ireland Assembly, Committee Room 30.